Good morning and welcome to Channel 1 News Check, today being the 16th day of March 2021. Hope you're having a fruitful day. And of course, some farmers in the country are quite happy that the showers have already begun trickling in. But we'll be talking about a lot in this show. So kindly, for the next an hour or two, kindly join me as we discuss COVID-19 vaccine. Of course, we have been having it for roughly a couple of days after it jetted in 1.02 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine landed in the country March 13. And of course, the Health CS Mutahi Kagwe was in line to pick up the vaccine and especially talk about the distribution. And of course, some countries have raised issues on the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, but we will be looking at the COVID-19 vaccine right here in Kenya. But what do we know about the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine? Of course, the research code name being AZD122, and it was developed by Oxford University in partnership with the AstraZeneca, which is an English Swedish pharmaceutical firm that began the process of the vaccine late last year. 30th December is when the vaccine was approved for use, and in January the 4th, that is the first day that the COVID AstraZeneca vaccine was administered to the first person, of course, outside the trials. The trials taking place sometimes last year. Some countries have raised concern, as I had alluded earlier, with some of them suspending, including very own Uganda and South Africa, and a lot of European nations have suspended the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. But what are the concerns that have been raised when it comes to this vaccine? That is exactly what we will be looking at. Remember, we are live from the broadcasting house in the county of Nairobi. We're also live on all our social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and our KBC app. Kindly, let's look at this issue as it is continuing to unfold in various countries. And to help us dive into this discussion, I'm joined by Dr. Nazila Ganatra, who is the head of department at the National Strategic Public Health Programs. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Asante sana, Njue.
And perhaps to start us off, on 3rd of March, that is when the first COVID-19 batch arrived in Kenya. And last week, I think it's last week, we also got 100,000 vaccines from our very good friends. But have you received any concerns, or have you had any concerns raised just the same way that we are seeing some countries raising concerns on the efficacy and perhaps the side effects of this COVID-19 vaccine?
Thank you very much for this question, Mr. Njue. I'd like to reiterate that we registered. We have the regulatory authority in Kenya, the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, which actually registers this vaccine. And the registration is not based on a haphazard kind of registration process, but the registration is based, of course, on the WHO emergency use listing, as well as other stringent regulatory authorities. The Pharmacy and Poisons Board does due diligence on the safety, efficacy, and quality of the medicine, as well as the vaccines or even other medicines and health products in the market today. So the safety, efficacy, and quality were established before the registration in the country for the emergency use listing.
And perhaps we can have a quick listening to what the CES had to talk about when the vaccines arrived in the country on 3rd of March. Actually, he was there to pick up the vaccine and talked about now we have changed the game from using old equipment and old tactics to fight COVID-19. And now we are having something stronger in the COVID-19 jab. If my director can cue that in, we can listen to what the Health CS had to say about the COVID-19 vaccine. But as we wait for that, how has been the distribution of the vaccine? We heard that, of course, the frontline workers, that's the healthcare workers, the teachers, and the security forces were the first in line to receive the jab.
Yes, so we have a concrete COVID-19 vaccine deployment plan in place. And we are planning to roll out the vaccine in 3 phases over the 3-year period, starting this year, 2021, and ending in 2023. So the first phase, which is going to end in June, we are targeting the essential workers, which include the healthcare workers, as well as the teachers, the uniformed forces. And the second phase, subsequently, persons over the age of 50, persons over 18 who have some comorbidities, for example, obesity, high blood pressure, cancer. They are also included in that phase. And then the third phase is persons who are in congregate settings, such as the prisons and informal settlements. So that is how we have aligned the phases. However, the phases may be able to overlap at some point once we get the vaccine, adequate doses. As you know, that we have received 1.02 million doses in the first phase. So, and we have already placed orders for the subsequent orders. So once the vaccine is available, depending on the supply, then we'll be able to sort of even merge the phases. So that is basically the plan of action. And the distribution of the vaccine, we are currently utilizing the current structures that are already available. That is, we already do routine immunizations. So we have facilities in the country, across the country, who do routine immunizations and have the sort of cold storage and all those structures in place. So the distribution, therefore, will be flawless because we're using the existing structures.
And perhaps let's first of all listen to what the health CS, Njue, had to talk about or had to say in regards to the vaccine when it arrived on March the 3rd of this year.
This is a game changer for the war against COVID-19. As soon as these vaccines leave here, they are going straight to Kitengela, where we have got very good storage facilities. And from there on, it will roll out to the rest of the country, beginning with the regional hospitals, down to the level 4s, level 3s, and level 2 hospitals. And we will also be engaging the private sector, institutions, the hospitals, so that they can also assist. We are starting with our health workers. Kenya has approximately 400,000 health workers in the country. After that, we are going to roll out to other frontline workers. We have got the police, we have got the teachers and other people. After that, we are going to go to people with comorbidities, people who have got other infectious, people who have got other diseases, so that we can also protect them.
That is Health CS on 3rd of this month, when he was receiving the first batch of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. And he talked about the game changer in terms of COVID-19. But looking at the concerns that have been raised, Daktari, do you think perhaps it can hinder what exactly the CS has talked about, that this is a game changer and now at least we are able to far much fight COVID-19 vaccine now that we have the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine?
Thank you for the question. So in light of the COVID-19 vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine in particular, in this case, we have seen that the WHO is actually recommending that we continue vaccinating. Of course, there are those concerns that have been raised regarding the side effects that have been reported in the Western countries, and they have temporarily halted their vaccine doses. However, in our setting, we have just started vaccinating. It's been just over a week or so, and we are of course, we are seeing their effects, but they're very mild. They're just common effects, such as the pain at the site of the injection, mild headaches, fatigue, nothing really serious. However, we have a safety and regulatory subcommittee in place within the larger task force group, which is monitoring this very actively. So in the safety and regulatory subcommittee, we have members from the Pharmacy and Poisons Board who are actually the point person in this. The Pharmacy and Poisons Board have an active pharmacovigilance department who have not only been monitoring this particular AstraZeneca vaccine, but they have been monitoring various medicines as well as health products from as early as 2013. The monitoring system is both electronic and manual. So over the years, we have been developing the system. So right now, we just want to ensure that everyone who gets vaccinated and has any effects which are of concern should be able to report that in the system. We currently, when we're rolling out this vaccine process, we have an electronic logistic management system, Njue in place. And the Njue system actually captures all those details, the batch number, your name, your contacts, any allergies that you may have, and any adverse events that you might experience. You may be able to report it then. You know, when you come in for the vaccination, you first come in, you're counseled, so that you could be able to, you know, it's not mandatory, so you have to give authority or authorization to get the vaccine. Then you go to the triage, and your details are then put into the system. After that, you're vaccinated, and they keep you aside for about 15 to 30 minutes just to monitor in case of any adverse drug reactions which may crop up at that point. Of course, protocols have been put in place in case there is such an event at the facility level. But further, after you leave the facility, if you go home and experience some adverse event following immunization, then you could always either call back to the facility, log into the Pharmacy and Poisons Board website, and be able to report the adverse event that you are experiencing. From there, the Pharmacy and Poisons Board is going to take it up. The Pharmacy and Poison Board, as well as the National Vaccine and Immunization Program, will be sort of compiling all these adverse drug reactions or adverse event following immunization processes. And there is a committee which has been put in place, which will be sort of looking at all this and checking out if there is something of concern for this population and for the country, and advise on the way forward.
Yes, the vaccine has been in the country for less than a month now. Have we had any serious cases, just like we have seen in other countries? And it has even led to them suspending the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine?
No, not that. There's no reports of such. We just have the usual, as I was saying, pain at the site of injection, mild headaches. Some people actually don't have any effect at all.
Whatsoever?
Yes.
Talking about the county preparedness, we've seen a lot of the vaccination happening here in Nairobi, and especially in the media. What about the counties? I remember some health unions had talked about we were not well prepared, we were not informed, we've not been involved. And of course, there is a task force in place to take care of the COVID-19 vaccination program.
Yes.
How is the situation now?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we have a COVID-19 deployment plan in place. So the plan this COVID task force has various subcommittees which actually looks at very critical aspects of the rolling out of the vaccines. In the planning and coordination, we have the larger task force, right, which is a national task force, and as I've mentioned, the subcommittees. So what happens in the counties is that they're going to mirror such structures as well. So they will also have like county task forces headed by the county governors as well as the county commissioners and other cadres. And then they will also have the task force itself, the subcommittee. So the subcommittee will obviously be chaired by the county director of health and will have the various stakeholders such as the county pharmacists, county EPI logisticians, health promotion officers, and there is a whole list of people who will be there. And that again will be mirrored back to the sub-county level. So it's a structure which is mirroring each other. If there's any problem at the sub-county level, it can be escalated to the county and then finally to the national task force, and from there we can just take it up.
And of course, the health CS did talk about this being the first batch. When do you expect the second batch, and how will it be distributed?
So the first batch we had planned for 1.02 million vaccines, which have already arrived. In the second phase, we are planning to have about 9.8 million vaccines, and subsequently in the third phase about 5 million vaccines. So of course the procurement and logistics subcommittee is working on that very actively. We are very proactive, and with our partners we are able to place an order and receive this vaccine from the Gavi COVAX facility, which is the one we're getting it through.
And talking of partners, last week India did donate 100,000 vaccines to Kenya. And of course, India is one of the worst hit countries by the COVID-19 pandemic. Kindly explain this kind of partnership. I think the partnership says the cordial relationship between the countries. You know, we are always helping each other, and therefore it's just an extension of goodwill that, you know, that we're partnering together in this fight. You know, it's not only a Kenyan fight, it's a global fight. So we all have to leave our differences, if we have any, and get our hands together and work on this. We have to defeat this pandemic so that we could be returned back to the normal. Yeah. And talking of distribution, we've seen issues when we have KCPE, KCSE, when we have voting. There are some places which are not accessible. And not only are that accessible, now we have a vaccine that requires refrigeration. So how will this work out? And especially now that we're going to be having the 9.8 million batch coming in and the 5 million batch. Are we really prepared for that and for the distribution as well in remote areas?
So the plans are ongoing. You know, the first phase was a bit easier for us because we already have the infrastructure in place. The second phase will also be, we're going to still use the existing structures. Of course, right now we have limited facilities. But as we move into the phases, the facilities, the number of facilities who will be immunizing will also increase. We are also going to be utilizing the private sector, the FBOs, that is the faith-based organizations, as well as the NGOs to assist us in this. So we are working together. The number of facilities will also increase. That means that it could go as far as we can go. You know, we also have to look at the storage conditions, and therefore the facilities that we choose should have those that infrastructure in place, and also the staff there or the HR need to be trained on these vaccines. You know, it's a new vaccine. They need to learn how to use it and how it looks, you know, just so that they are on the same page.
And talking of people raising concerns, of course, I'm quite sure some people don't know a lot about the COVID-19 vaccine. Have you organized a way perhaps we can have civic education when we are airlifting ballot boxes, when we are airlifting examinations? Of course, we are hoping that we also be able to airlift these doses and be able to reach to the remotest corner of the Republic. But people also need to know about the COVID-19 vaccine, and especially now that we are having issues raised by even countries, and even some countries suspending the vaccine.
Yes, we are going to, of course, the communication will be continuous to educate the public on the importance.
Do you have one in place as we speak?
The communication aspect, or?
Actually, the civic education.
So we normally give education, because right now we're dealing with health workers.
Yes.
So the communication is actually channeled to them. So we do that in very specific ways, like through their, let's say, the associations.
Yes.
Right, so that we could reach our target audience. But as we progress into the other phases, we'll obviously be using other media platforms for this kind of engagement, so that everybody is on board, and so that everybody can be able to access this vaccine and be able to find, fight the pandemic.
The concerns raised by countries, and even some have suspended the drugs, do you think that's a big blow, and especially when we need to make sure that each and every person can access a vaccine. And of course, if that clip is ready, my director can cue it in, because some countries, and yesterday other countries, and mostly we are seeing the picture playing out in Europe other than other countries. Of course, Africa, we have some few countries who have had some reservations, Uganda being one of them, and South Africa. But mostly we are seeing this in European countries, where of course all the vaccines, or majority of the vaccines are. Perhaps if that clip is ready, we can have a look at why some of the countries are raising concern. Of course, when it's ready, we're going to be dealing with that. Is it a big blow to actually the penetration of the vaccination program in Kenya and of course in the world?
To be honest, I don't think so, because as per the WHO guidance and the European Medicines Agency authority, the regulatory authority in Europe, they have said that they have identified only 30 of such cases vis-a-vis a dose, the dosing of the AstraZeneca to over 5 million people. So 30 is a small number compared to the 5 million doses. However, also it's been noted that there is no really causal relationship. It's not the vaccine which is causing the side effects as per the WHO recommendations and guidelines and their statement. So what is going on right now, which is the pausing of the vaccines in those countries and giving it maybe 14-day period to be able to investigate exactly what is causing. But currently the vaccine is not said to be causing those side effects. Even during the clinical trial process, those side effects were not even reported at that time. So this is a completely new thing. So that's why maybe they are halting to just be able to investigate to see if this vaccine is the one causing it. It may be that even without the vaccine, the general population would actually exhibit such effects.
And some people have asked why the AstraZeneca vaccine. Why don't we have a variety? We have Pfizer, we have Johnson's, we have Sputnik, we have others, of course. Why just AstraZeneca? Perhaps in Kenya we could have tried like 2 or 3.
Yes.
A variety?
So for the Pharmacy and Poisons Board to be able to register a vaccine or grant emergency use authorization, it first needs to be already been granted the WHO emergency use listing or any stringent regulatory authority use listing. So at that point, the AstraZeneca was the only one which had been given the emergency use authorization, the WHO one. So when they applied in Kenya, then the Pharmacy and Poisons Board did due diligence and did its own evaluation and granted the same. However, during the same period, we had the Sputnik 5, which is also, I believe it's already been granted the emergency use authorization as well in the pipeline. Okay, so we did not go for the Pfizer in the first phase because of the very stringent cold
storage.
Yes, the storage. We require like -70 degrees, right? So we don't have that kind of equipment right now. I know we have in some facilities, like maybe the research institutions, and they would not be able to actually store the 1 million doses. So that's the reason we were sort of thinking, we need to invest in equipment if we need to buy the Pfizer vaccine. The Moderna as well, it requires -20, but the AstraZeneca is 2 to 8, which is in our current setting, the normal vaccination range, so we can use our existing equipment.
And here in Kenya, we've seen some Kenyans also raise their reservations on the COVID vaccine. They're talking about when the president, his deputy, or the leaders, we haven't seen them taking. Even the health CS, we haven't seen him take the jab. And in some countries, we've seen, like in Rwanda, we've seen Paul Kagame. We've seen in Nigeria also, we also have seen 3 former and sitting presidents in the United States take the vaccine publicly. Do you think that can be a big boost if we see our head of state and perhaps a few leaders and our health CS take the jab?
Well, it probably would, but we are following our deployment plan the first phase, we are very specific to essential workers. However, of course, if they would like, they would also get it. They are, of course, eligible in the second phase because they fall in that category mostly. But yeah, I think if the political let's say
the political elite.
Yeah, the political elite would like to take it, then they're most welcome. But as we had planned, because we're following the deployment plan which is in place, and because of the limited number of doses, we don't want to leave our health workers out there. They're the frontline workers, our teachers, when we have just a limited doses for the first phase.
Of course, we are in the third wave. Some countries are talking about, like America, they're talking about anticipation of a fourth wave, but we will talk about that. Let's first of all hear why some countries have their reservations on the COVID-19 vaccine, and especially the AstraZeneca one.
The AstraZeneca vaccine over fear of thrombosis. However, authorities and experts say there is no link between the COVID-19 vaccine and blood clots. The European Medicines Agency, the World Health Organization, and the UK's medicine regulator all say the vaccine is safe to give and will review the claims laid. WHO says it's aware that a small fraction of people may have a severe allergic reaction to the COVID-19 vaccines, which is normal to any vaccine or drug. As a precautionary measure, WHO recommends that before the first dose, clients should inform the vaccinating team about any allergic reaction they may have had in the past. Oxford vaccine can be stored in a normal fridge, which makes it much easier to distribute. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni says he's still contemplating on the continuity of the jab in his country. Kenya and some other African countries, United Kingdom, France, Australia, and latest entrant Georgia have continued with the rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine.
And of course, the World Health Organization and also the AstraZeneca talking about the jab is safe, and all the complications that have been mentioned, they are not tied to the jab. And why is it that we are seeing a lot of European nations as opposed to Asian and perhaps North America and African nations giving the jab a wide berth?
So maybe it's just a precautionary measure on their part, because they have recorded such adverse events, and they would like to ensure and investigate that that is not the cause. Of course, some countries have identified specific batches of the AstraZeneca and are investigating on those particular lines of that particular batch. So that would be the reason.
And we've seen frontline workers receiving the jab. Have we seen here in the country frontline workers or even the security or the teachers raising their concerns and others skipping the jab here in Kenya?
Well, we are receiving the... Of course, right now we're still in the process of rolling out. We are also training the health workers. So far, I think the health workers, they know the importance of this vaccine and what it could do. It's a game changer in this pandemic. You know, the effectiveness of the vaccine will prevent you from getting, if you get the COVID-19 infection, it wouldn't be as severe. So keeping all those in mind, it's better to take the vaccine and be safe. And be safe, and let your family, friends, your loved ones also be safe.
Last year, I think it was November or December, when the task force on the vaccination was tasked to actually start out a modality on how the vaccine will be rolled out as soon as it gets to the country. Where is that task force as we speak, now that we have the vaccines? And what are some of the successes that you can talk about that the task force has been able to achieve in the little time that we've had? So
the National Task Force on the COVID-19 deployment and vaccine deployment is still active, very active. We meet once every week to discuss. The the task force has subcommittees, and their various subcommittees also meet weekly, planning and picking up the concerns or any hitches that may come across along the way, and then we discuss it in the larger task force and sort of like be able to mitigate those kind of risks. So yes, the task force is very active in that, and I would like to congratulate the task force for the rollout of the vaccine and the planning and distribution and the rollout. I think it's going on pretty well.
And the private sector, in the CS's speech when he was receiving the COVID-19 vaccine at the airport, he talked about they will be partnering with even the private sector. And of course, we will be waiting. And of course, pharmaceutical companies here in the country and also hospitals and private individuals would want to bring in the COVID-19 vaccine so that they may be able to administer and perhaps get some coins out of it. How do we ensure that that process is not skewed, or what kind of partnerships are you going to have? Because let's just be very, very fair, is that Kenyans, we have so many cartels and we have so many issues. We had the COVID, the COVID millionaires, and we also had issues at the KEMSA. So how are we going to ensure that as soon as the private sector has been given the green light to start bringing in the COVID-19 vaccine, that process is not skewed so that it may go in line with the task force and the ministry's agenda?
So before we move into the private sector, currently we are also leveraging on the private sector to distribute the COVAX vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine. We have partners with the private facilities that are also doing routine immunization vaccines as well. So we are engaging them. However, we are also planning to allow the private sector to be able to import the vaccine and distribute. However, we have not discussed discussions are still ongoing on how that will be done, and the protocols which will be, and the guidelines which will be issued by the National Task Force and the Ministry of Health will then be shared with everyone concerned.
Yes, and we just slightly, almost 2 weeks since the COVID vaccine arrived in the country. Of course, we cannot talk much about the successes and, of course, as challenges as the process is still ongoing. But what are some of the challenges that you have seen, or are you looking forward to as we continue to distribute the vaccine?
Yeah, as you have well said, we're just 2 weeks old. The challenges have really not been there. Something glaring is not there. But however, we are working on continuously educating our health workers, capacity building them, so that they could be able to take up and roll out the vaccine seamlessly. Yeah. So that is the message that we are passing, that we need to work together as a team. All through, from the national, county and sub-county. Yes.
Indeed, and looking at social media, I can see Elia, Roba, you're watching, Charlo Emmanuel watching from Mombasa, Njue and James asked, why are they not wearing masks and even gloves during, I think it's because during the vaccination, we've seen the nurses.
Yes, they are wearing the masks, but they're not wearing the gloves, because it's not necessary. You're just giving an injection. There's no sort of invasive sort of procedure. It's just, yeah.
Of course.
And of course, they're sanitizing as per the protocols.
Okay.
Either hand washing or sanitizing before and after. Yeah.
Of course. Thank you, James, for that question. Remember, we are live on all our social media platforms. We see Isaac Chepli watching from Kericho, Ainamoy, Eric Petro watching live from Ndiwa, Homa Bay County, and Erico Petro also watching Channel 1. This is Channel 1. This is News Check. I'm Ben Troy Njue. Lensa Odingo is our sign language interpreter, and I'm hosting Dr. Anazila Ganatra, who is the head of Department National Strategic Public Health Programs. And today we are discussing matters COVID-19 vaccine, and of course the Oxford AstraZeneca, which is being used in the country currently. And there have been some of the concerns that have been raised by a number of people and also countries, some even suspending the usage. But Kenya, we are continuing with the usage, and everything, as Dr. has talked about, everything is going on as planned. And you talked about the Oxford AstraZeneca. Are there any plans of perhaps having other COVID vaccines in the country in the near future?
Yes, as I'd mentioned earlier, the Sputnik 5, which was also granted the emergency use authorization.
The Russian one?
Yes.
Yes.
In Kenya. So it's so far it's been given the emergency use authorization. So as we're rolling out the AstraZeneca vaccine through the COVAX facility, we're also going to be discussing how these other vaccines can be brought on board.
Other than, of course, the Oxford, AstraZeneca, we're also having a few partners. Who are other partners who are playing out in this game as we continue to receive more jabs and as we distribute them?
So we have various partners who are represented in the National Task Force, in the subcommittees, and they are assisting us in, in various areas, basically in all subcommittees. So we have got the UNICEF, we've got the WHO, we have got the Gavi and CHAI, and all other partners. So yes, we are working in collaboration with our stakeholders to ensure that this vaccine deployment is running seamlessly and smoothly.
Yes, as you've mentioned about emergency, and we know very well vaccines take years to develop, but we do not have that time. Do you think the risk is worth now that we have the vaccine and we have COVID, or we really need to do a little bit more research to know exactly what will happen, because we might have issues later in the coming years and nobody can foresee those or some of these problems that we may end up in?
So, as you had said, the vaccines have not, okay, fine, they were developed within a short period of time, but those technologies have been existing in the other vaccines which we are using routinely. So it's just that this process has been expedited because of the situation we are in. We're in a pandemic, so we don't have the luxury of time. So I wouldn't say that they're completely new in terms of the technologies. It's just that the process has been expedited because of the situations we are in currently. Yeah.
Kenya is currently experiencing the third wave, and so other countries, others have had to observe more stringent measures when it comes to COVID-19. And of course, we have another threat, that is the new strains of the coronavirus that are currently, we've seen some in South Africa, and they have really ravaged that country. Should we be concerned? We just started the vaccination exercise, and of course we have the third wave, and of course we have the risk of new variants in the country.
So what I'd say is that we could take the vaccine, and that is going to assist us in reducing the severity of the disease. We are also going to continue we're going to continue with our health protocols, that is the social distancing, the sanitizing, the masking up. So therefore, and I don't think the variants have not been reported as such here, so we shouldn't be worried. Our borders are also being monitored very closely to be able to see that there are no infiltrations of people from other neighboring countries. Yeah.
We have seen the COVID-19 AstraZeneca vaccine is a 2-dose vaccine. And of course, we have seen that the Johnson's is just 1. What happens to someone who just receives the first dose and after the side effects, he feels, no, I'm not going to get the second jab? And is it actually one of the things that would actually be against what we are trying to do here, having the 2 jabs and making sure Kenya is rid of COVID-19 in the next foreseeable future?
Yes, so the AstraZeneca vaccine, as you rightfully put it, is actually a 2-dose vaccine. You first get the first dose, and then after a period of 8 to 12 weeks, you get the second dose.
You've talked about a period
8 to 12
8 to 12
yes,
weeks.
Yeah. 8 to 12 weeks, you get the second dose. So if you take the first dose and then you react, so you're not completely protected, because your protection actually comes after the second dose, the complete protection. So if you take the first dose, then you're not completely protected. It's very important for you to take the second dose as well. In the case of Johnson & Johnson, yes, it's a single dose. Currently, it's not been registered in the country. So once it's registered, maybe then we could be able to, maybe bring it through the COVAX system or through the private sector. But that's all dependent. Yeah.
Of course, somebody is asking, what is the difference of the vaccines? Of course, we will touch on that. Are you disturbed that we are on the third wave, but we are continuing to put down our guards as Kenyans when it comes to the war against COVID-19?
Well, we just, I think the public is sort of getting fatigued with the masking and everything, yes. So, but we have to reiterate to them that the war is far from over. We have to keep sanitizing, masking up, maintaining social distance, and then, of course, we have an additional preventive protective measure as the COVID-19 vaccine. So we encourage everyone to take
especially
it.
We've been seeing this in churches, in groupings, in meetings. Of course, the president did talk about let's not drop our guard. Of course, somebody was asking, what is the difference of these vaccines? We've seen we have Pfizer, we have some have to be stored under very, very, very cold temperatures. Others have just normal, like the AstraZeneca one.
Yes, it's the different technologies which have been used to manufacture the vaccines brings about the different particular the conditions under which they have to be stored. So different companies have done a lot of research in the various vaccination preparations that they have made. Yeah.
Willie Rotich, you're watching from Nairobi. Elia, you say you love KBC indeed. Thanks. If you have any questions, suggestion, or even where you are watching us from, we'll be more than delighted to sample some as we go on. Again, we are with Dr. Nazila Ganatra, who is the head of department at the National Strategic Public Health Programs, trying to put things in perspective, and especially when it comes to the just arrived COVID-19 vaccine, the AstraZeneca ones. Of course, there have been raised, concerns have been raised on the same, and of course, now that we in our third wave, we really need to put our guards up. New corona variants, what should we do as a country to avoid having them? Because reports are out that some of the COVID-19 vaccine are not as efficient to the new strains of the virus that are replicating and are seen to be spreading more faster and more infectious than the COVID-19 that we know.
So we are closely, of course, monitoring the situation on the ground. We get reports on if there's any variants of these COVID-19 which has been detected. So far, I can say we are pretty much safe, but also we cannot really conclusively say that a particular vaccine is not effective against a particular variant. Studies have to be done, and the data of the studies will be able to guide us. So at the moment, we are currently using the AstraZeneca vaccine, and I think it's still effective against all the variants. We still need studies to show otherwise. The WHO also recommends the use for the AstraZeneca vaccine, even with those variants.
From your professional point of view, should we also be open to explore other COVID-19 vaccines, like the Johnsons, like the Sputnik, as you put it?
Yes, so once they get the emergency use authorization in the country, then we could be able to explore its use. So far, since we only have the AstraZeneca one and the more recent Sputnik 5, we'll be working with those. But as the companies apply, the manufacturers apply for the emergency use authorization in Kenya through the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, and if they are granted the emergency use authorization, of course, after carefully monitoring the safety, efficacy, and the quality of the products, then we are open to looking at other vaccines.
And you are the head of the National Strategic Public Health Programs. I think this question should have come a little bit earlier. What are some of the mandates that you have or your department is having, and more so in relation to what we are dealing with right now?
So the National Strategic Public Health Programs Department has 4 divisions under it. We have got the National Vaccine and Immunization Program. That's why the COVID-19 vaccine is actually, we're one of the stakeholders in that. We also have the NASCOP, the national, yes. And then we have the national, the TB program, right? And we have the malaria program. Yeah. And
Kenyans want to know exactly the timeline when we expect. Of course, we are doing this in phases, the healthcare workers, the security, the teachers, and perhaps the second and the third. When can you expect, like a normal Kenyan or an ordinary Kenyan than me will receive the jab? When can I expect perhaps to get that jab, other than the 3 phases I've talked about, the frontline workers?
Yes, so, you know, right now in the 3 phases, we're concentrating on the persons who are most at risk. So once we have, of course, that's just a plan of action, but once we get more doses and more people are willing to vaccinate, then the whole population can also be vaccinated. Of course, we're not going to be vaccinating persons under the age of 18 because of course, the studies have not shown the efficacy of that, and studies have not been carried out. So right now we're just focusing on the most, because the vaccines are for lack of a better word, they're not in abundant supply.
Yes.
So we have to prioritize our vaccinees, the persons we have to vaccinate. Yes.
Actually, that was supposed to be my next question: the age and those people who cannot take this jab.
So under the age of 18, right? Because there are no studies right now. In pregnancy, the studies have not been done yet on that. So it's unless if the doctor or the medic feels that the vaccine is more beneficial to the pregnant lady, but of course it's not recommended at the moment. So it's if the benefits outweigh the risks. Yeah, and then of course people over 50, we're giving them the vaccine, and persons over 18 who have comorbidities are at a higher risk. Yeah.
Indeed, you are watching Channel 1 News Check, and Rotich, you say you're watching from Nairobi. Eriko, thanks. County preparedness. Thank you for that question. County preparedness. I remember, I think it's a week ago, the Senate did convene a meeting. The Health Committee did organize a sitting with the governors, and they talked about they had not been so much involved when it comes they were not involved actually in the process of bringing in the vaccines, and the counties themselves have already been given the mandate to handle health issues in the country. Have we now actually been able to rationalize and put those 2 systems in one gear?
So in the National Vaccine Deployment Plan, we have a National COVID-19 Steering Committee, which is chaired by the Honorable Senator Mutahi Kagwe, CS of Health. And he has members in the steering committee, of which, of course, the counties are being represented as well. And falling back down on the actual deployment task force, we have members of the county, the COG represented. So especially in the, for example, planning and coordination subcommittee. So they are, of course, in the discussions, and as we are rolling out, we are also informing them of how this rolling out to take place. And now, from now, as I had mentioned earlier, there is the mirroring of those committees at the county and the sub-county level. So they are very much involved. We are, of course, continually training them, building capacity, so that we could be able to share the lessons learned. Yeah.
Talking of the 3rd wave and looking at our country being one of the developing countries, of course, we have a lot of challenges, and especially when it comes to the COVID cases. Now we are registering over 700,000. Do you think that we should have perhaps more stringent measures and put in place to actually try and mitigate this? Because if you're talking about the 3rd wave and we're talking about new strains that may land in the country, and of course they could be in the country, it's just that we do not know.
You know, we already have the protocols in place. As I mentioned earlier, the masking, the sanitizing, the social distancing. By stringent protocols, do you mean like lockdowns?
Not exactly. Okay, the last one actually did ravage the economy so much, but more stringent. We're talking about, the president talked about these measures, but we saw before he spoke on Friday, we saw political rallies, we saw gatherings, we've seen each and every person, each and every leader, and especially when we've been having by-elections. Should we first of all suspend some of the things that we are doing currently? Yes, I believe that they were limited. The political rallies were suspended, and the gatherings for funerals and for weddings has also been limited to 100 persons. So yes, it's our responsibility as ourselves and to our family, our individual, our country, to be able to protect ourselves, keep ourselves safe. And we can only do that if we follow the protocols as laid down by the government. And then, of course, on top of that, we could also have the vaccines, which will further reinforce our protection. Yeah. And looking at the laws that we have in the country, we've seen a lot of things being challenged as soon as they land. Do you think we really need some laws perhaps to govern how these drugs will later be brought in the country so that we may actually help out Kenyans? We might see cartels taking siege and, of course, taking over the process. Actually, the registration and the importation of the medicines is very stringent, and it is governed by the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. Of course, there is always the that aspect of what you're saying, that there might be some cartels. Yes. However, we are putting in a very strong monitoring system in place whereby we'll be monitoring all the batches, especially for the COVAX facility. Even the current system, the Chanjo KE system, it's also monitoring the stock levels and how the stocks are moving, as well as the batch number. So if, for example, you were to take the vaccine today, you will receive a message that you have taken a vaccine today at this time of a particular batch number. And then later on, while you're about to get the second dose, and it will remind you that you're due for your second dose. So we are tracking the batch number for the safety purposes as well. You know, for the ADRs, in case there's any adverse events following immunization, we need to know the batch number, and also for security in terms of pilferage and other sort of issues. So in case, you had mentioned earlier about the fake vaccines. Yes. So that would also sort of curb that, because the fake vaccine will obviously not have the batch numbers that are in the system. Yeah. Somebody asks, after someone has been infected by COVID-19, after how long should they get the virus? The vaccine? Yes, I think I wanted to know if the person has had the jab. Has had the jab? Or after someone has been infected by COVID-19, how long should they, or can they get the virus? Yes. So there could be two questions in that question. One question would be, if I've been infected by the COVID-19, am I eligible for a jab? Yes. Yes, if you're infected, not after you've already... No, there are two questions. One is, if you were infected earlier, are you still eligible for the jab? So the answer is yes, because studies have shown that you could get reinfected. Okay. Right after the first infection. So yes, it's recommended that you get the jab. The second question that can come out from that question is, how long after, like if I'm infected right now, how long should I wait to get my vaccine? So that is after your symptoms are gone, after the 14 days of isolation or quarantine. So after 2 weeks of that, you're completely asymptomatic and you're free, then you can go and get your jab. And can somebody get the vaccine when he's already has been infected by the virus? Depends, because you know, if you're asymptomatic, but we'd recommend that you actually have it after, like 2 weeks after isolation, because you're already having the active disease. So your body is already sort of immunity against it. Indeed. But first of all, let's have a fast break. Of course, your questions, suggestions, or even where you're watching us from, highly, highly, highly welcome. We are hosting Dr. Nazila Ganatra, who is the head of Department National Strategic Public Health Programs, and of course the COVID-19 vaccine and its distribution falling squarely under her docket. We'll be right back. Let's first of all take a breather.
Fanya hivi, wewe teremuka tu chini. Hata watu wanangojea, unasema unione? Si ninakuona ndio huyu kucha. Kucha ninakuona.
Yoi.
Nimekuita mara ngapi Kate? This is the Nissan Note.
Hii ndio motoka.
Not that this is the Nissan Note we are giving out.
Na ni rahisi sana kuwekelea bid. Unaenda kwenye lipa na M-Pesa. Unaweka paybill number 4032353. Kisha unakelea account number ya Nissan Note ni Note, N-O-T-E. Namba ambayo unapenda, labda unapenda 100, labda unapenda 200. Wekelea Note 100, Note 200. Alafu tutakuitisha shilingi 40 peke yake, 40 bob only. Weka pin yako, utakuwa umekelea bid ya hii Nissan Note. Inakungoja wewe mahali popote ulipo. Mimi na mtumishi tutakupea.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
I've heard a lot about this sorcerer. He can do whatever we want, including getting rid of Ashok and making Sushim the crown prince.
My blessings are always with you, Ashok. Nothing is impossible when you have the blessings of your parents.
Ashok's defeat.
Before you're going to defeat me? So what happened?
Here, drink this.
What happened?
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
There's nothing in that woman's grave. I was here on the day of the burial. It's only Mr. David's remains that are in there.
Do not get excited just with anything. And country things, don't make me feel interested.
And well, if my presence does make them feel uncomfortable, well, too bad for them. I am Amaya Serrano, the daughter of Florencia Martinez, and I'm not going to lower my head before anyone.
The only one who's missing now. But I know I'm going to find you.
Next on.
Mimi Dr. Chua, Alwatan Chua.
Mimi ndiye Dr. Sawasawa.
Mimi ni Dr. Ashraf mwenye hii hospitali.
Ashraf usilolote.
Wewe daktari, hospitali yako kabisa?
I am the boss.
Okay.
That's all. Get passion.
Mwanangu mimi namuona kulegea tu.
Afaa tumpatie chupa moja ya maji.
Maji asikioni?
Hii chupa moja mama kisha tufanya sahali. Lakini kama wengine tutatia lita 20.
Si majanga haya?
Kama uzobongo.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
I've heard a lot about this sorcerer. He can do whatever we want, including getting rid of Ashok and making Sushim the crown prince.
My blessings are always with you, Ashok. Nothing is impossible when you have the blessings of your parents.
Ashok's defeat.
Before you're going to defeat me? So what happened?
Here, drink this.
What happened?
On the next episode.
Mwangaza wa kiwanda cha New KCC ulikuwa umedidimia kwa miaka mingi na kuacha maelfu ya Wakenya bila matumaini. Azma ya Rais Uhuru Kenyatta ya kukipa kiwanda hiki mwamko mpya na kuunda nafasi zaidi za kazi ni afueni kwa wengi. Wiki hii kwenye Project 254.
Wakati KCC walianza modernization ndio tukafurahi sana. Tukaona tumefika nyumbani.
Tunafaidika na hii kiwanda sababu hakuna bahari nyingine tunapelekaga maziwa tangu zamani.
Zamani tulikuwa tunakunywa tu maziwa, lakini wakati huu tunashukuru Mungu kwa sababu tumepata mahali ya kupeleka KCC.
Next on
We're tired of ignorance, been down 400 in bondage, no we won't take it no more.
Like my favorite painting, one I would never sell. Well, tries to take your soul, I need a haze of light in this dark age. Oh, yeah. We're the survivors, yeah, the black survivors.
Next on.
But I think that what you don't like and what you don't want to admit to yourself is that whatever it is that you and Amaya had ended before it even started. It is obvious that he lied to you. For some reason, that person did not want you to find out the truth.
But why?
Lucrecia and David, those two were working together. Lucrecia was in Chiapas when the plane where David was boarding exploded.
He loved another woman who was very important to him, and knowing that eats your soul. And that's why you got yourself pregnant, to keep him with you and to stop him from staying with that other woman. I mean, look around you, Max. That woman is all over the place. Your father shouldn't have told her that she could come to El Paraíso whenever she pleases.
But he already did.
Nichukulie kwa mfano ndani ya matatu.
Yaani mtu mzima na miaka zake, hizo miaka zote mtu ajui kujua kuandika note, note tu peke yake. Kusoma kweli utasaidia.
Nini nakusumbua na nini?
Nauliza, ni bwana?
There. It's not okay.
Mama Njue.
Don't you dare.
Haya, kwani ni vita? Nini wewe? Yaani wataka kumpiga. Huwezi mpige nini?
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Women are making great strides in trade, in not just in family, in trade, in many other spheres. And this week we want to explore, what are women doing? Okay.
Choose to challenge.
Okay.
So what are you choosing to challenge?
Wow.
I'm choosing to challenge myself in many things which I'll share.
Many of us women, when we are given hard opportunities, the first thing we think is, I don't want to be involved in that. Yeah. I don't see, what am I getting out of that?
There is a cliche that used to say women don't support women. I want to believe, and I've seen it with my two eyes, that has changed. That is in the past. So if you ever hear anyone saying that, I choose to challenge. I choose to challenge.
On the next episode of
Domo jibaba lizima na chekechea.
Bana nalimu masomo.
Mwambia mambo ya kutegemea watu mimi nitakuja yaacha kabisa.
Kutegemea watu kivipi? Sasa hicho ni jeuri ama nkejeli?
Tutayaona matokeo yake.
Basi cheka sana mchana, usiku ulale.
Usiku na kesha kicheka.
Mr. Nzomo, tell me more about yourself. Mombasani, madam. Is there anything wrong with Mombasani?
Welcome back to Channel 1 News Check, and just in case you're joining us today, we are discussing matters COVID-19 vaccine. It's almost 2 weeks since the vaccine got into the country on 3rd of March 2021, and of course the frontline workers, security and teachers are the first to receive the jab, but as well as having on the expectations of what will happen or what will conspire after we have had the COVID vaccine here in the country. Of course, concerns have been raised not only here in Kenya but also abroad, with even some countries suspending the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which we are currently using in the country. Of course, the World Health Organization and of course the company itself has talked about the efficacy of the jab, and talking about they are just mild side effects, just like you have side effects when we have other medication. But that has not stopped some countries from giving a wide berth to that vaccine. But today we are talking about that, the distribution, and of course all the surrounding things that come with that vaccine. And we have Dr. Nazira Galnatra, who is the head of Department of National Strategic Public Health Programs in the Ministry of Health. And thank you indeed for making time. And
thank you very much.
Before then, we were talking about the third wave that we have in the country. But of course, if we observe the protocols that we have been talking about since COVID landed in the country slightly over a year ago, then we will be fine. And talking of the third wave, the technology that you are using, kindly explain a little bit. You touched on it when you talked about Chanjo
KE.
Chanjo KE.
Yes.
How does it work?
So it's a system which has been designed specifically for the vaccine rollout, but eventually we'll roll it out to all the other routine immunization programs as well. So this vaccine program, this platform, the software, is very important for us so that we could be able to track exactly who's getting the vaccine and the batch number that they're getting it from, and any adverse drug events following immunization can be reported on that system. You know, we need the data so that we could be able to make informed decisions, even as the National Task Force. So what happens is that initially we had planned to do pre-registration of persons to come to the facility, pre-register, and then they're called for the jab. But very soon we'll be also having self-registration portal. They're working on it, the IT team, and in fact we'd like to commend them because they've come up with this system in a very tight schedule and timeline.
Yeah.
So, so what happens is that once a person goes to a facility, a healthcare facility, they're able to register themselves over there. The usual, the name, date, identification, the sex, gender, and then race, religion, all the normal, the information that is required. After that, we issue when the vaccination, okay, we check the temperature and everything, we do the triaging, after which we go for vaccination. The batch number of the commodity that we're going to use, and in this case, it's going to be the AstraZeneca vaccine, will be recorded into the system. And you'll then get your vaccine jab. Immediately you get that, you'll get a message on your cell phone that you have received the vaccine, your first dose, on this date, and this is the batch number. So this is very important for two reasons. One is the security reasons, to track each and every vial of the vaccine so that we are accountable of this vaccine, so that we later don't see some pilferage or any other story that they got lost or something. So there is that tracking, track and trace, right? And then the second one is another important thing. The adverse events following immunization are a very important aspect in this case, considering that this is a vaccine which was given emergency use authorization by the WHO as well as the Pharmacy and Poisons Board here in Kenya. We know that it's a fairly new vaccine, although the clinical and safety data has been carried out and therefore issued with this emergency use authorization. It's very important for any person who experiences an adverse event or adverse event following immunization to actually report on this system so that we could be having our own data to be able to make decisions. If not even within locally in our country, we could also be able to give this data to WHO, because this is a global pandemic. We're all sharing information. Maybe our demographic population may not be affected or will not have ADRs which other people are sort of reporting. So this is a very important aspect that you are aware. If you have any AEFI, that is the adverse event following immunization, you are able to report that AEI. You can also be able to specify which batch number you got. So in case there's an issue with the batch, then you could easily be able to either halt or recall, or, there are very many decisions which can be made with that kind of data. Yes.
And talking of data, we've seen, and especially when we were doing contact tracing, people actually giving out wrong information in regards to their contact. How are you ensuring that you proof seal this? Because the other one actually had a lot of issues, somebody giving out another number, somebody giving out somebody else's number. So we had an issue with contact tracing. How are we making sure that this one is airtight? Because when we have talking about vaccines that are being offered for free, it could be a channel for people to start salivating over the money that could come out of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Yes. So, this is not, I think the reason why people were giving the wrong numbers at that time is because of the fear of being quarantined or isolated. In this case, there is no fear. We're not going to quarantine you or isolate. We just want to track you.
And it's good Kenyans know that.
Yes.
Yes.
So once you give your contact, we can be able to follow you. For instance, if after the vaccination and we have monitored you for 15 to 30 minutes, there is no adverse event which has taken place at the facility, but then you go home and you start experiencing an adverse event following immunization, and you can call us back, or come back to the facility and report that. Then the people on the ground, especially the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, as well as the National Vaccine Immunization Program, those investigators will take your contact and closely follow you to see, have your effects reduced? Is there something that you need help? So this type of contact tracing is not to pick you up and probably isolate you.
Yes.
It's actually to assist you so that you're more comfortable and you get better.
In short, you're saying that you've also put in measures just in case somebody has adverse effects after that person has gone home.
Yes. So if there's an adverse event, you could either come back to the facility to report, but there are also online reporting systems, such as
still on this Chanjo KE.
Yeah, so there's the one in Chanjo KE, but there's also the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So this data from both the Chanjo KE and the Pharmacy and Poisons Board will be consolidated, and an expert committee has already been formed, which will be going through this data, especially where the adverse events following immunization take place, so that they could be able to make informed decisions, which would guide even the larger task force on the way forward.
Of course, when we are talking about the vaccine, we have to also factor in the cost. And looking at some of the costs that we're seeing on the internet, of course, we have to factor in the transport and the other logistical issues. What can Kenyans expect, perhaps how much, to get a vaccine? All
right, so currently the government has procured the vaccines through the Gavi COVAX facility. The price is constant along this particular COVAX facility, and but as a government, we're not going to charge for these vaccines. They'll be issued for free. Yes.
And we've seen a lot of EU nations skip the COVID AstraZeneca, and looking at the temperature, looking at the environment, the climate, there is quite different from Africa. Could that be perhaps the reason why we are experiencing countries opting to give AstraZeneca vaccine a wide berth, because perhaps it works different in a certain setting as opposed to others? Like in Africa, of course, we are in the sub-Saharan Africa, and looking at Europe, and the Scandinavian countries, of which have all actually suspended the use of that vaccine. They have different temperatures, different climates, and of course, everything is different.
Yeah, so we have, as I had said earlier, that we are using the AstraZeneca because of the emergency use authorization, which was issued by the WHO as well as the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. Another reason for actually going for the AstraZeneca was, okay, of course that's the main reason, because if it's not granted the emergency use authorization, then we could not be able to utilize it here. But further, we were also looking at the cost of this vaccine. It is pocket-friendly for us, and the storage conditions. As we had said, we're using the existing infrastructure, and therefore these vaccines can actually utilize that infrastructure. We don't have to have investments in infrastructure at the moment. But also, not only that, we also had clinical trials of the AstraZeneca vaccine here in Kenya. So, and there were no major issues which were raised at that time. So therefore, this is what we have opted to use at the moment.
And looking at the cost, still on the cost, we have other costs other than the vial itself. You also have the syringes. You also have what do you call them? Of course, we have other costs other than the vial itself.
Yes.
Are we the ones still shouldering that cost? And how can we bring it down so that when we start receiving the COVID vaccines in private facilities, of course, the cost could be down so that each and every Kenyan can be able to access it?
So at the moment, since the vaccines are free and public health facilities, we don't really require a lot of like the vaccines are coming with their own syringes. Yes. So that cost has been sorted. But however, when we look at the private sector, when it brings in the vaccines, we still have to, I think discussions are still ongoing, and guidelines which will be issued on that regard. Yeah.
And I believe the last time I had a vaccine was when I was a baby. So actually I can't exactly remember what are some of the normal side effects of a vaccine other than this one. What are some of the side effects? So
you'll get the pain at the injection site.
That's normal.
Yeah, that's normal. Sometimes you can get fever, right? Some chills, body pain. But this is actually just your immune response. You see, your body is now gearing up to fight the vaccine that you have introduced into your body. So it's your body producing antibodies to fight the infection, if it recognizes. It can happen, either it's viral or bacterial infection. It's sort of producing antibodies to fight. So it's your immune response, prepping up. So you shouldn't be worried.
And are there other factors that play out when you talk about a vaccine? Looking at America, they are using the Pfizer and BioNTech. Looking at Russia and some of the countries which were in the USSR, they are using the Sputnik. Looking at Europe, a lot of countries were using AstraZeneca before they switched, or they decided first of all to put it aside. Does it depend on perhaps on climate, on perhaps on regions or something like that, or it's purely on countries basis, their preference?
I think it's purely on country basis. I don't think the weather or the demographics actually play a role in this.
Okay, kindly hold that thought. I'm informed that the government spokesman is currently holding a press briefing at his office at the Teleposta Towers. Let's first of all listen in.
Collaboration and cooperation is that you've always been able to carry out our messages or information to the audience that is Wanjiko. Each and every time we give it out to you. And therefore, from me as the government spokesperson, I just want to say thank you for that collaboration, and perhaps the least we can do is to try and deepen it and even extend it even further. That we must consistently be able to work together for the betterment of our society, because a society that is not well informed is a society that has no future, because information is power. And for you to move forward to the next stage of whatever development, then you need that information. And therefore, as the office of the government spokesperson and the media, we must be able to consistently work together to be able to meet our objectives as the government, but also as members of the media. Now today, I want to look at a couple of issues that are topical. And the first issue that I would wish that we look at is national examinations. You're all aware that national examinations are just about to start. Maybe practicals have already started, but the other even papers are bound to start in the coming days. But you're also aware that we are talking about an examination when we are still in the middle of a pandemic. We'd recall that sometime last year around March, learning was suspended as part of the containment measures against COVID. This was later followed by 7 months gradual reopening of schools for learners who are in the examination classes. We're talking about class 8, Form 4, and also grade 3. That was sometime in October last year, after 7 months of being at home. Subsequently, sometime this year, around about 4th January, there was full reopening of schools, and learning has been going on since then till today. So despite of the disruption that coronavirus did bring or meet into our society, we as a country have been very resilient, and today we are able to talk about being ready to conduct examinations when it looked like it's going to be a lost year for most of our learners. So as a country, I think we need to be very proud of what we've been able to achieve, particularly considering that there are those who predicted nothing but doom and gloom. So as the government, we are ready to be able to administer exams to our learners and our candidates who are in class 8 and Form 4. And effective measures have been put in place by the government to ensure that this year's examinations are able to go out and to be rolled out in an efficient and a seamless manner. And therefore, it is all systems go. Examinations shall be conducted as follows. You may already be having the dates, but just for the sake of those who may not be having the dates. For KCSE, that is Kenya Certificate Secondary Education, dates are from 8th of March, which is already passed, and that is because practical exams are already ongoing. to 21st of April. And the candidate population for KCSE, we're talking about 752,981. And the centers that will be used to administer examination for this cohort are 28,437 centers across the country. Now for KCPE, that is for primary, examinations will be from 22nd to 24th March, a couple of days ahead. And we're talking about candidate population of 1.191725. That is 1,191,725. The number of exam centers across the country will be 10,437. There will be a concern really regarding areas like Merti, Kapedo, and even other locations that have been affected by rising lake waters or where facilities have been submerged. I'm here to inform you that examinations will be conducted across the country, including Kapedo and Merti that have had issues to with insecurity. Kapedo is perhaps one of the safest places now in the country, and these centers that I've mentioned are established even in Kapedo, including Merti. So there is no student that will be denied the opportunity to do examination because of insecurity. We have got sufficient measures in place to ensure that exams are conducted in a safe and secure environment. Even students that were or that whose schools were affected by the rising lake waters in areas of Baringo, you're aware about many facilities that were submerged. Such students were transferred to other facilities and they have been registered there, and therefore they'll be able also to sit for examinations just like any other students. And therefore there is no cause for alarm. Everything has been put in place and the government has thought about this back to back. So there is nobody, no candidate that will be denied opportunity to sit for exam either because of school fees or because of circumstances where their schools were. So that has been taken care of by the government. This is a multi-agency activity, meaning that we're not just talking about Kenya National Examination Council on its own or Ministry of Education on its own. We are talking about a multi-agency where there are several players, some of them agencies of the government that have come in to ensure that these examinations are carried out in a successful manner. Now, some of these agencies, you may wish to know, of course, Ministry of Interior must be there for reasons that you understand because of security and integrity of these examinations. So local administration at the forefront of this to ensure that the integrity of the examinations are upheld or is upheld. Of course, the police equally the same for reasons, again, that we understand. And there has been also an establishment of a command center for purposes of communication to allow quick response. So in the event that something happens somewhere in those far-flung areas, there will be communication to the command center and a response will be initiated quickly to be able to deal with that situation. So everything has been put in place to ensure that there is no disruption and that exam activities will go on uninterrupted. Even as we conduct these exams, like I said at the very beginning, we are all aware that COVID is pretty much in our midst. We're talking about a third wave, having come from a second wave, and therefore, even as we conduct these exams, they will be conducted under an environment of adherence to COVID protocols. So even as you move around some of these centers, if you'll be allowed, depending if you are able to seek permission to be able to go there, they will be conducted under strict observance of COVID-19 protocols or measures. So there'll be sufficient spacing. All candidates will be having face masks, and there'll be sanitizers or hand washing stations as they get into the examination rooms. We must be concerned about the health of our learners. So the government has put all measures in place to ensure that one is happening. Finally, in as far as this is concerned, I want also to inform you that the government has been able to mobilize all resources that pertains to efficient management and administration of examinations. So there is nothing that the government has left to chance. So everything is being put in order. But I also want to take this opportunity to thank the teachers. A lot of times we do not necessarily appreciate the work they do, but remember, we are talking about examination. But we want that have been able to prepare these learners to get to a point where now they can be able to sit for exams. And they have done this sometimes under very, very difficult circumstances and conditions. And therefore, I want to take this opportunity to thank the teachers for preparing these learners to be ready to be examined. But number two, I also want to thank the parents as well as guardians. You remember initially when schools were reopened last year for class 8 and Form 4, there was instruction that nobody will be allowed to visit schools as part of the containment measures. And the parents and guardians abided by that. And that has been the case until today. And therefore, they have been very supportive and understanding. I also want to take this opportunity to thank them for that. Well, of course, plus the other stakeholders who have been very, very instrumental in ensuring that the learning has gone on uninterrupted. Until now, we're talking about administering exams. So finally, I just want to take this opportunity to wish the candidates the best of luck. We are aware as a government that they've been out for 7 months, but exams are normally set for the average student. And because most of our children are beyond average, got no doubt in our mind that this will be an easy exam for them. So they should not be worried whatsoever. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is something that is very close to the hearts of many. And I want to talk about the crashes on our roads. And this is about the many accidents. We may not call them accidents, we just call them crashes that we experience every single day on our roads. At least each and everyone in this room has somebody that they know that has been involved in a crash. If not a close relative, maybe then a close friend, a friend to a friend that you know of. And most of these crashes, believe it or not, are crashes that are preventable. Most of them. But nonetheless, they cost huge amounts of money, sometimes loss of life or maiming someone for life. So then when an accident happens, other than looking at the person who has been involved in the accident as the victim, he may be the sole breadwinner of some of these families. Sometimes they stay in a hospital for a very long time, and therefore forcing the families to even sell their property or deplete their savings, and therefore leaving such families destitute because of a crash that could have been very easily avoided. You know, the government has done what it is supposed to do, to set regulatory framework, to formulate laws, and even codes. But codes alone will not help one to obey traffic rules. There must be a mindset that predisposes somebody to obey traffic regulations. Even here in this hall today, I know that some of you have been able to jump traffic lights. And you do it knowingly. Look left, right, half the back, and half the only one on a Sunday afternoon, and there you go. The most strange thing about it all is this. When we go to other countries, it could be going perhaps to Europe for those who have been able to travel there. When you go to perhaps, even a country within this region called Rwanda, when you go there and you're driving, we obey those traffic rules. Why is it so hard for us to obey them here? Now, because of that mindset, that is why this country, despite of having very few vehicles, the vehicles we have on our roads are not many. We may think that they are many, but they are not really. So when you compare the number of vehicles and the fatal crashes that we experience in this country, it's too much. And it shouldn't be. And the whole purpose, or the whole idea behind that is because of mindset. Mindset that you want to be the one on the road alone. Mindset that this vehicle can move, let's try to find out how fast it can go. Mindset that you don't care whether this matatu driver is overspeeding and you're the one sitting in that matatu, and sometimes even cheer the matatu driver on. Until an accident happened, then we turn back and say...
Indeed, that is the government spokesperson, Colonel retired Cyrus Oguna, giving the state of address in regards to the upcoming Kenya Certificate of Primary and Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education examinations. 7 months our learners were out of class because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But some of the things that he has touched on is that all the preparations for the exams have been completed and all is set and secure. And something very important he has talked about is that you do remember that they were students who were displaced because of either security issues or even because of floods and rising water levels. But he has said that all students were transferred and they will be sitting for their examination with no problems at all. And something else that we have been experiencing, especially in the Rift, in the North Rift, is because of insecurity has been quite something that the government has even had to issue even more stringent curfew, 6 to 6 in the morning. And of course, security there has been a big challenge, but he has said that all is set and done for that. Just in case you're joining us, this is News Check, and today we are looking at the COVID-19 vaccine that landed in the country 13 days ago. Of course, several concerns raised by countries, and also Kenyans have also raised some of the concerns, and we are trying to address them and seeing what could be the next way forward. And I'm joined by Daktari here from the National Strategic Public Health Programs, where she is the head, and that is Dr. Nazira Ganatra. And before the break, we were talking about vaccinations and regions. We've seen North America, they kind of prefer, in America they're preferring the Pfizer. In Europe they prefer the AstraZeneca before the suspension by some of the countries. We've seen in the Scandinavian countries, they kind of torn between the Russian one, Sputnik, and AstraZeneca, but mostly in Africa, I've seen it's AstraZeneca that we are currently using. Any reason for that?
Well, AstraZeneca, as I had mentioned earlier, has actually undergone the emergency use authorization listing by the WHO. And it's also available under the COVAX facility, the Gavi COVAX facility, which ensures that all countries get the vaccine in an equitable manner at a cost which is standardized across all countries who are under that particular facility.
And talking about equity of vaccines, I was watching one of the international media stations quite early in the morning and talking about 1 in every 5 Americans have been able to get a COVID vaccine jab. But looking at countries like Kenya and others, we're quite lagging behind. Of course, there are several factors that play out in such a case. But what do you think Africa should do to ensure that we are not always holding the short end of the stick when it comes to things like vaccination and development of vaccines? And of course, we are learned. We can be able, as you said, Oxford, the AstraZeneca Kenyans did participate even in the trials and perhaps some of the research that went into making of that vaccine. But looking at the big disparity and talking about equity, I don't think that is equity.
So, of course, we as Africa and Kenya, we are always sort of like getting these vaccines. Like at this time, the Western have actually invested in R&D. So I believe that moving forward now, this will be some of the lessons learned. We'll be able to now try and focus. We have learned people around. We could start actually focusing and giving priority to our research as well, so that we could also be able to become independent and be able to develop our own vaccines, which could be used even worldwide. So, I mean, why not?
Okay. And something that has stood out in Colonel Oguna's speech is the matter of security. And of course, a couple of months we saw even a GSU commandant was murdered there, because that place has rampant insecurity cases that we have seen over the last couple of months. How do we ensure that in the distribution of the COVID-19 vaccines, that all security protocols have been observed? Have you put any security measures? Because of course we need these vaccines even to the deepest and most insecure parts of the country.
Yes, as a task force, we had discussed this. There was also an aspect of security, and the relevant ministries and authorities have been engaged, and they have been providing the security. And also, that apart, we have also been monitoring the batch numbers of the vaccine, right from the central stores to the regional stores, and ensuring that each facility gets a specific number of vaccines with the batch number attached to it. So we could be able to monitor the entire pipeline. Yeah.
And how do you ensure that only those that have been earmarked to receive the vaccine, you're talking about the healthcare workers, the security, the teachers, are the ones that get the vaccine? We don't hear about a case that we've seen politicians that might decide to circumvent the whole event so that they may benefit for perhaps themselves and their families. How do we ensure that the process is airtight, that only those that are mandated and earmarked to receive the jab receive the first jab, as we are doing right now?
So, of course, first is the communication aspect. We are communicating with the various stakeholders or participants in the first phase. Like right now, our communication is just channeled to healthcare workers. Of course, when they come in, they have professional numbers. You know, when you register, like I'm a pharmacist by profession, so I have my registration number from the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So when I walk in over there, I have to provide that number. Yes, so I'm sure the teachers will also have similar sort of categories, as well as the military people, like the personnel. But however, we're also using the identification card as well as passport when we're taking that information in the Chanjo KE system. Yeah.
And looking at all the vaccines that we have, we can't really say that they are 100% effective. But in the coming months, in the coming years, we will be having an airtight vaccine that will be just like what we've had over the years for BCGs and stuff. We'll be having a vaccine that really works. What happens if I get an AstraZeneca vaccine today, and perhaps in the next couple of months or perhaps years, we find another vaccine? Or perhaps I move to the United States where they're using Pfizer, or perhaps in Russia where they're using Sputnik. Can I have a second dose of a different vaccine?
All right, that's a very important question. So if, for example, we're taking the AstraZeneca vaccine right now and you get the first dose, and then let's say after the 8 to 12 weeks, maybe you're now in the US and you can only access the Pfizer vaccine. So you will just take the Pfizer vaccine. However, you will not take the second dose, but you'll start the dosage again. This is because the technologies which have been utilized to make or manufacture these vaccines are actually different. So therefore, to be able to get the maximum benefit of the vaccine, you'll have to start with the first dose of the Pfizer, and then you wait for the second dose.
We shouldn't expect any perhaps reactions to the body, because at least the body recognizes that there is something that there is the vaccine, the COVID, the AstraZeneca. So there won't be a problem of using another one. Of course, they're using different technologies to fight the same thing.
Yes, they shouldn't be a problem. Although, of course, studies are still being done on that issue. You know, the vaccines are fairly new, so the information is also just trickling in, and we're trying to consolidate. However, it of course recommended that you just stick to the current regimen. We're also not really sure if it is going to be an annual vaccination thing or what. So at the moment, we'll just take the vaccine and then await further guidance from the WHO and other regulatory authorities.
Take me through the process, assuming that I'm a teacher or I'm a healthcare worker, and the first thing, of course, I'll get the jab. What is the documentation, paperwork, certificates? Do you have anything that's on?
Yes. So, as I was mentioned earlier, we have the Njue system, which has been developed for this vaccination program, the COVID-19 vaccination, but eventually it will be rolled out to other vaccines, routine vaccines as well. So there is not much paperwork. You just have to register yourself, of course, with your credentials, name, your location in case somebody needs to go to you. In case of an adverse event following immunization, one needs a follow-up, so those details will be there. After the first dose, you'll get your a message on your phone because you'll provide your phone number about the vaccine that you've taken, on what date, what batch number, and your subsequent dose, the date. And a reminder will then be sent in due course, so that after the 8 to 12 weeks, you'll get a reminder reminding you to please report to the facility so that you could be able to get the vaccine. Once you have gotten your second vaccine now, of course, the process will be the same. You'll not need to register again. You'll just go, maybe give your identification card, and you'll already be in the system. So then you will get your second dose. Immediately after you get your second dose, a certificate will automatically be generated into the system. It is a very specific certificate, so that it, you know, to avoid any, what do you call it?
Actually, the paperwork itself.
Yes.
To ensure that...
to ensure that it's a genuine certificate, right? So it will be properly earmarked, right, to ensure that you get it. Once you get that certificate, you could be able to print it and utilize it. I'm sure once the borders fully open up, we'll be all required to produce a COVID vaccination certificate. It might be a mandatory requirement. We don't know at the moment. But in the event that it is, then we have this certificate which you can be able to utilize. Yes.
And of course, when we talk about vaccines, a lot is talked about looking at conditions. Sometimes you hear that if you have certain conditions, you're not supposed to take a certain vaccine. Looking at the COVID one, a lot of Kenyans, let's be honest, do not know that they already have an existing condition. And from what we see is that we're just seeing somebody just gets a jab, we wake up, you go. There are no tests, perhaps to ascertain whether you should get the COVID-19 vaccine or could be a reaction or something. Do you think perhaps there should be something like that, a platform perhaps for anybody who feels that their body could be having an issue to first of all get some tests before getting the vaccine, because we do not know what will happen after receiving the jab. The COVID vaccines have been here for what, like 1, 2, 3 months?
Yes. So in terms of having the COVID vaccine and reacting to it or being allergic to it, of course, we have to see the risk analysis. In case you feel that there might be an issue with yourself, maybe with the contents of the vaccine, then it's always good to seek medical attention and guidance from your medical doctor. Yeah.
You received the AstraZeneca and of course the Pfizer. There are two doses. How am I sure that after I receive the first dose, I'm going to receive the second dose? You not have some shortage or something like that?
All right, that's a very important question. So, as I'd mentioned earlier, we have got various subcommittees under the larger national task force, COVID deployment vaccine task force, and the specific committees that are actually looking at those specific areas. For example, now we have a committee for procurement and logistics. Already they have requested for another batch of vaccines, and the logistics have been planned in such a way that we will not have a miss out of any of those commodities for the second dose.
So they are coming like what? We can say like a pair, so that we make sure that...
Like when we are doing the forecasting and quantification, we are working with the population, the targeted population, right? So already for the first phase we have received. So now we are procuring for the second phase. So we already have the vaccines for the first targeted phase population. Yes.
Since COVID-19 was reported in the country, Nairobi has always been leading in the number of cases reported every day. We're talking about a quarter, where some countries, of course, have had the jab, and like America, they're doing very well. 1 in every 5 Americans at least has had a jab. How do we ensure that we redistribute it in a way that will be actually represent the national picture that we have? Or do we have the 47 counties receiving exactly the same number of COVID-19 vaccines?
So the counties are actually receiving according to the okay, at the moment, they're receiving according to the target population that we're targeting in the first phase. So that is what we're using. And as I mentioned earlier, since the counties are also having similar task forces replicated, so they are also doing their own micro-planning and coming up with the logistics, which they will then share with the national task force, COVID-19 task force, such that they can be able to receive their commodities, yes, in good time and in the right quantities.
Exactly, where Nairobi, Mombasa, Kiambu have been leading, of course, there's a way that you're going to be able to distribute them to make sure that in the counties that are experiencing very few number of infections or low infection rates get, for lack of a better word, a quota system that will be used in the vaccinations, right?
No, we are actually targeting the healthcare workers in those settings, the essential, or the second phase. Yes, the second phase we also have to check the population. So it's that specific population, then we have to give as per the request per county.
Yes, of course, we do not know all the COVID-19 vaccine. I've heard over 100 in trial, in the last phases of trials, but we are hoping that, of course, they will work and not have side effects that like we have seen being reported. But of course, we need to pick up the pace because of time. But what would you say, or what do you tell Kenyans in regards to the COVID vaccine and the COVID protocols now that we are in the third wave?
All right. So what I'd like to emphasize is that we have to adhere to the COVID protocols, the masking, the sanitizing, hand washing, and the maintaining of the social distance. That is very important because we are still in the pandemic. We also encourage the eligible persons under the currently the first phase to actually go take this opportunity and take the vaccines. It will protect them, protect their loved ones, their family, and in case of an infection, the severity will not be as such. So, so we'll be happy and safe and hopefully return back to normal.
Indeed. Of course, your department is tasked with a very noble job, noble duty, because the COVID-19 vaccine, everybody is really watching out so that Kenya can be one of the countries that has made tremendous steps in terms of the medication and the vaccination. Your final words, can you assure Kenyans that the whole process will be as transparent as possible, and each and every group that is supposed to get the COVID vaccine will get that? Of course, we've seen some issues that have really brought Kenya down when it comes to the COVID fight. We had KEMSA, we had also other issues that have come up in regards to the COVID-19 fight.
Yes, so we would like to encourage everyone to take the vaccine and to know that this process is, we're trying to make it as seamless as possible and as transparent as possible. So for any questions or any information that is required, we are always there to give all the information. and information for everyone. We also encourage the healthcare workers and the other essential workers to come in numbers and be able to take the vaccines. And also, in case of any adverse event following immunization, kindly report this incident so that we could also have our own database, which we could also share globally for global information and knowledge, so that we can all make informed decisions with that.
Still on the same, just as we wind up, the World Health Organization did start a portal after the first case was reported, giving us an update on perhaps the number of cases, giving us an update on how things are, the number of deaths, of course giving us all the protocols that we need to observe. Do we have a protocol, a portal here in Kenya that we can be able to track? You talked about Chanjo KE.
Yes.
Can you get all the information, perhaps the number of people who have been vaccinated, perhaps the number of, basically the number of the vaccines that have in the country and how they have been distributed? Do you have such kind of a portal?
Yeah, this particular system will actually give all that information. Of course, as I had mentioned earlier, that the system is pretty new, and therefore this is work in progress. But in due course, all the statistics will be available. Yes.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Nazila Ganatra. Of course, there was a question that if newborns can get, but you did clear that out by talking about 18 for now, because each and everything that is being done is more or less trial and error. But I'm quite sure we will be trying, not erroring. But thank you indeed so much for watching. I've been your host, Ben Troy Njue, and Len Saudingo has been our sign language interpreter, assisted by Lucy Mwaura on the bottom right of your screen. But for now, I'm going to let Dr. Nazila Ganatra, who is the head of department at the National Strategic Public Health Programs. And thank you so much, Dr. for making time.
Thank you.
Suleiman Yeri is coming up next with Tamrini.
On the next episode.
Mwangaza wa kiwanda cha New KCC ulikuwa umedidimia kwa miaka mingi na kuacha maelfu ya Wakenya bila matumaini. Azma ya Rais Uhuru Kenyatta ya kukipa kiwanda hiki mwamko mpya na kuunda nafasi zaidi za kazi ni afueni kwa wengi. Wiki hii kwenye Project 254.
Wakati KCC walianza modernization, ndio tukafurahi sana. Tukaona tumefika nyumbani.
Tunafaidika na hii kiwanda sababu hakuna bahari nyingine tunapelekaga maziwa tangu zamani.
Zamani tulikuwa tunakunywa tu maziwa, lakini wakati huu tunashukuru Mungu kwa sababu tumepata mahali ya kupeleka KCC.
On the next episode of
Jomo jibaba lizima na chekechea.
Bana nalimu masomo.
Mwambia mambo ya kutegemea watu mimi nitakuja yaacha kabisa.
Kutegemea watu kivipi? Sasa hicho jeuri ama nkejeli?
Tutayaona matokeo yake.
Basi cheka sana mchana, usiku ulale.
Usiku na kesha kicheka.
Mr. Nzomo, tell me more about yourself.
Mombasani, madam.
Is there anything wrong with Mombasani?
Fanya hivi, wewe teremuka tu chini. Hata watu wanangojea unasema unione. Si ninakuona ndio huyu kucha. Kucha ninakuona.
Yoi.
Nimekuita mara ngapi Kate? This is the Nissan Note.
Hii ndio motoka.
Not that this is the Nissan Note we are giving out.
Na ni rahisi sana kuwekelea bid. Unaenda kwenye lipa na M-Pesa. Unaweka paybill number 4032353. Kisha unakelea account number ya Nissan Note ni Note, N-O-T-E. Namba ambayo unapenda, labda unapenda 100, labda unapenda 200. Wekelea Note 100, Note 200. Alafu tutakuitisha shilingi 40 peke yake, 40 bob only. Weka pin yako, utakuwa umekelea bid ya hii Nissan Note. Inakungoja wewe mahali popote ulipo. Mimi na mtumishi tutakupea.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
There's nothing in that woman's grave. I was here on the day of the burial. It's only Mr. David's remains that are in there.
Do not get excited just with anything. And country things, don't make me feel interested.
And well, if my presence does make them feel uncomfortable, well, too bad for them. I am Amaya Serrano, the daughter of Florencia Martinez, and I'm not going to lower my head before anyone.
The only one who's missing now. But I know I'm going to find you.
Next on.
Mimi ndiye Dr. Chua, Alwatan Chua.
Mimi ndiye Dr. Sawasawa.
Mimi ni Dr. Ashraf kwenye hospitali.
Ashraf si lolote.
Wewe daktari, hospitali yako kabisa?
I am the boss.
Okay.
That's all. Get passion.
Huyu mwanangu mimi namuona kulegea tu.
Afaa tumpatie chupa moja ya maji.
Maji asikioni?
Hii chupa moja mama kisha tufanya sahali. Lakini kama wengine tutatia lita 20.
Si majanga haya?
Muzo bongo.
Next on.
Say if a bono pretend I find enough of them I sell way out like a vendor.
We tired of the ignorance. Been down 400 in bondage. No, we won't take it no more.
Like my favorite painting, one I would never sell. Well, try to take your soul. I need a hazel light in this dark age.
Oh, yeah. We're the survivors. Yeah, the black survivors.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Women are making great strides in trade, in not just in family, in trade, in many other spheres. And this week we want to explore what are women doing. Okay.
Choose to challenge.
Okay.
So what are you choosing to challenge?
Wow.
I'm choosing to challenge myself in many things which I'll share.
Many of us women, when we are given hard opportunities, the first thing we think is, I don't want to be involved in that. Yeah. I don't see, what am I getting out of that?
There is a cliche that used to say women don't support women. I want to believe, and I've seen it with my two eyes, that has changed. That is in the past. So if you ever hear anyone saying that, I choose to challenge. I choose to challenge.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
Samahani kaka. Ningeomba tu nijue wewe ni nani katika hii familia.
Kwa nini? Shamsa. Usianze kuniletea aibu. Mimi nakuuliza mambo ya chakula na mambo ya wanawake.
Mara majini, mara nafuata hotelini, yani sielewi. Nipeleke nyumbani.
Ofisi iko tayari na nilifanya interviews za secretaries. Yani kwa ufupi everything is ready.
Wonderful.
Ni tarehe 16 mwezi ni wa Machi mwaka 2021 kumradhi. Hujambo, karibu. Hii ni Tamrini mchana huu wa leo ambapo tunaangazia masuala ya kiakili ama afya kiakili kwa kina mama wajawazito. Ndio tutakuwa tunapigia darubini mchana huu wa leo kuweza kufahamu vipi ugonjwa huu unawapata kina mama wajawazito na vipi ambavyo wanaweza kupata afya ama wanaweza kupata tiba na kuondokea katika swala hili. Swala hili limesababishia kina mama wengi humu nchini ama pia katika mataifa mbalimbali kuweza kujitoa uhai kwa sababu ya msongo wa mawazo ama vile vile matatizo ya akili ambayo yanawapata hususan wanapokuwa wajawazito. Lakini kwanza tupate shajara ya hali ilivyo na vipi wana maripota wetu wapo, wanahabari wetu wapo katika maeneo gani siku hii ya leo. Na shukran sana kwa kuendelea kuitazama KBC Channel 1. Hii ni Tamrini, karibu. Jina langu ni Suleiman Yeri na mwenzangu wa ishara ni Lensa Odingo. Na leo hii nipo na akina dada ama nitawaita warembo wawili ambao wamekuja kunisaidia kuweza kuchanganua na kufahamu masuala ya ugonjwa wa kiakili kwa kina mama wajawazito. Tatizo ambalo husumbua kina mama wengi ama baadhi ya kina mama ambao wanapata ugonjwa huu, swala ambalo linaathiri si wao peke yao, hali familia zao, watoto wachanga, jambo ambalo lisipozingatiwa kwa kina linaathiri familia na kuweza kufanya kwamba familia hazisongi. Ni wametoka katika wataalamu hawa, wametoka katika shirika la Thalia Psychotherapy, kampuni hii ambayo inapambana ama inatibu ugonjwa huu wa kiakili mbalimbali. Lakini leo hii tukiamua kwamba tutaweka ngazi zetu ama tunaweka vyombo vyetu katika masuala ya akina mama hususan wale ambao ni wajawazito. Je, karibuni sana wageni wangu. Upande ule wa mbali yangu kidogo kushoto kwangu ni Nzisa Ngonda, alafu pia vile vile Esther Wanjiru Muhi ambaye yuko karibu nami hapa, ambaye amevaa blauzi ya rangi nyeusi kama sijakosea. Kwa hivyo hali ikoje? Ama kabla hatujaangalia hali, ugonjwa wa akili ama kama kwa Kiingereza wanavyosema maternal mental health ni nini haswa?
Ni akili, ni ugonjwa wa, naweza sema ina affect wa mama walio wazito, wajawazito, yenye inafanya wapitie anxiety na depression, tunaweza sema kwa ufupi.
Labda Nancy, nawe kwa utaalamu wako, swala hili la maternal mental health ni nini haswa?
Maternal mental health ni hali ya kiakili ya afya ya wamama wajawazito ama wale ambao hawajajifungua na wale pia wamejifungua. Huwa ina cover the period between maybe a few months before birth and a few months after.
Chanzo hasa cha ugonjwa huu ni nini? Maana ni jambo ambalo linaathiri wakina mama wengi sasa hivi.
Kwa kawaida sababu nyingi huwa either ni za kimwili ama ni za mazingira aliyo katikati. Kwa mfano, kuna hali ya kiuchumi, kuna hali ya ndoa, kuna hali ya usaidizi anaopata kwa familia, kihisia na pia kiuchumi. Na kwa upande mwingine, wakati mama ni mjamzito, vitu mwilini hubadilika. Kwa ufupi, hormones hubadilika. Kunakuwa na influx ya hormones nyingi, na hizi zote huchangia hisia zake na fikira zake, na in turn depression na anxiety
inaingia.
Naam, Esther, naona unataka kuongezea swala hilo.
Venye amesema pia tunaweza semaje, uhusiano wake na partner wake ama husband yake inaweza pia kuchangia hayo maneno ya akili ya mwili, ugonjwa wa akili.
Na ugonjwa wa kiakili, labda tuangazie, mnasema kwamba partner wake, labda ni kipi kile ambacho partner wake amefanya? Manake tuseme ugonjwa huu unaweza kumpata wakati gani? Labda mtoto wa kwanza, wa pili ama wa tatu. Sana inatokea wakati gani labda? Esther.
Tunaweza sema wakati wa mtoto wa kwanza ama wa pili, haichagui. Lakini unajua mtu akiwa mjamzito yupitia ile maneno utapitia ukiwa na mtoto wa kwanza si yenye utapitia ukiwa na mtoto wa pili. So tunaweza sema kama haupatiwi hiyo support na mpenzi wako tuseme, inaweza kuadhiri, kwa sababu unasikia venye Nancy amesema hormones zinabadilika. Kama upati hiyo support unajisikia uko peke yako, na hiyo inaleta mafikira mingi, baadaye unaanza kuchukia huyo mtoto bila kujua. Alafu saa zingine inaweza kuwa maybe mnaweza kuwa mnaenda uko nje, watu wanakuambia uko mjamzito, congratulations, tunagoja kugoja mtoto, lakini maybe we mwenyewe haufikiria ama hausikii. Sasa unaanza kusikia vibaya kwa sababu we una hiyo furaha kila mtu ako nayo.
Nancy, hali hii ya ugonjwa wa kiakili kwa kina mama wajawazito, tuseme kuna wale ambao familia zao labda amebarikiwa watoto wa kike kwanza ama wa kiume kwanza, na labda anataka sasa mtoto wa kike atokeze, yani mtoto wa aina hiyo. Je, hii pia inaweza kuchangia swala kama hili?
Kwa ukubwa. Vile nimesema, zile shida hutokea pia depend na emotional support from the family. Sasa kwa hii, for instance, in this case, support from the family hakuna. Hiyo sasa ni emotional support. Bado hatujaingia upande wa uchumi kwa pesa. Alafu pia depending on hii ndoa yao ilifanyika kivipi. Ni ndoa ilifanyika kwa haraka sababu msichana alikuwa mjamzito akaamua kuenda kuishi na baba mtoto, ama ni kitu kilipangwa? Kwa sababu hizo circumstances zote kwa upande mmoja ina determine huyu mwanamke atavumilia nini, atafanya nini kukaa kwa hii ndoa. Na kwa hiyo kufanya nini kukaa kwa hiyo ndoa ndio itachangia ama itapunguza ama itaharibu afya yake ya kiakili. Ndio.
Tuzungumzie athari ya kiafya ya kiakili, na labda tushashakuja mgonjwa katika hospitali yenu hii ya Thalia kuja kukaguliwa. Je, sasa ziko aina ngapi za ugonjwa wa kiakili wakati huu wa mama akiwa mjamzito?
Ziko nyingi. Tutasema ziko nyingi kwa sababu reaction ya kila mtu ni tofauti, na pia hormones za kila mtu ni kama vile tunasemanga, mwanamke akiwa mjamzito, mimba ya kwanza haitakuwa sawa na ya pili. Hivyo ni vitu viwili tofauti, so reaction huwa tofauti. Na pia kuna anxiety related issues na kuna zile depressive related issues, na hizi zote pia zinategemea kabla kuwa mjamzito hali yake ya kiakili ya afya ilikuwa vipi.
Labda Esther, tuchanganue moja moja ndio ili tufahamu, mtazamaji aweze kujua anxiety ni hali gani, na tuingie alafu kwa depression pia ni hali gani, ambavyo ndo mtu atajijua kwamba mimi ni mjamzito na niko na maternal health issue ambayo ni ya depression ama ni anxiety. Tuanze anxiety, Esther. Anxiety iko vipi haswa?
So anxiety inaweza anza na kila saa unasikia kulialia, ama hata kwenda nje kufanya tu ile kazi ya kawaida yenye unafanyanga, maybe kuosha watoto, unasikia kiwa ngumu, hata kwenda nje unaogopa, unashindwa nitaenda. Feel safe, unataka tu kwa mahali isolated. Alafu ikiendelea sana, hata utaki kuona watu kutoka nje kwa sababu unaona kila mtu anakuchukia ama akupendi. Haya, tukiendelea na depression, unasikia ukiwa isolated, au accept reality tuseme. ile ukiambiwa leo ni Monday na Monday unaendanga kazini unasema hapana, leo ni Saturday na nataka tu kukaa kwa nyumba. Yani hautaki kukuwa associated na watu wa nje kwa sababu hauoni unaleta nini kwao ama kitu kama hiyo naweza sema.
Je, depression inaathiri vipi Nancy zaidi kwa mama mjamzito akiwa ana hiyo swala la msongo wa mawazo ambao ni depression? Najua kwa taaluma iko tofauti, anxiety na depression.
Kwa mama mjamzito, depression itamuaffect yeye na pia mtoto, kwa sababu huyu mtoto yuko connected na mama hivi kwamba chochote anachokisikia mama kita transfer kwa mtoto. Sasa utapata mtoto anaweza zaliwa na shida zake, shida tu za kiakili, sio shida za kimwili haswa. Si shida, kwa ufupi sio shida utaona, ni shida utaobserve kwa muda. But kwa mama mwenye yuko na depression, in some cases anaweza hata jiua. Na hiyo ni athari kubwa. Kwa zote hiyo ndio athari kubwa kabisa.
Kwa hivyo athari ya mama ambaye yuko na msongo wa mawazo ambayo ni tuseme katika kitengo cha depression, ana athari ya kujiua.
Ndio.
Na sijui nataka kuona kwamba nitatambuaje kwamba Suleiman ama mkewe Suleiman ana depression.
Sasa ndo maana tuko hapa leo. Kwa sababu si watu wengi wanaweza ngasema ati enyewe mimi ninapitia hiyo safari. So ndio maana sisi kama Thalia tuna program yetu inaitwa Maisha. Sasa mama anapoenda hospitali ile inaitangwa prenatal care, anapojua yeye ni mjamzito, anafanya test pale hapo ndio sasa tujue kama ako nayo ama hana, tuitambue ikiwa mwanzoni, si kama imeendelea. Ndio.
Sasa mnapomfanyia ukaguzi, huu ukaguzi mnaangalia nini ndio mjue kwamba huyu mama mjamzito kweli ako na depression ama ako na anxiety?
So tuko na maswali kuna venye tunafanyanga, tunaweza semaje, test kitu kama hiyo. So yenye tunatumia kuna DMS5 kama kitu kama hiyo. So yenye si tunatumia sasa hivi ni maswali anajibu, akishajibu inakupatia ugonjwa wako ni gani according to venye tumekukagua. Na hizo maswali. So tumeweka hizo maswali na wewe inaweza tuambia kama ni anxiety ama ni depression. Alafu kila saa si venye unakuja, si maswali hazitakuwa the same, zitabadilika ndio tuweze kujua aswa ni shida gani uko nayo.
Nancy, labda
in addition to alivyosema Esther, kwa hii test akifanya haya maswali, tukipata majibu, kukikuwa kuna tashwishi yoyote ama kuna indication ya kwamba mambo hayako sawa, atakuwa referred kwa psychiatrist ama psychologist. Na huyo atamsaidia kuendelea mbele, kwa sababu si kama ugonjwa mwingine utapima damu ama utapima mkojo, ni kitu ambacho utaongea na mtu kufahamu anavyofikiria, alafu itabidi sasa kutoka hapo mpange vile utaweza kumsaidia, na itachukua muda. Si kitu ati ni kama ataenda leo kunywa dawa apone. Ni kitu ambacho lazima azingatie mara kwa mara kwa maisha yake vile anavyoendelea, kwa sababu maisha sio tambarere na vitu hufanyika na mtu anarudi mahali alikuwa.
Tuangalie athari za sasa asipotibiwa huyu mama mjamzito kuhusiana na hii depression ambayo tunaangalia, ambayo ni kabla. Hiyo depression ni kabla sasa. Alafu nataka baadaye tuangalie akishajifungua athari yake ni gani.
Kama yuko na depression, akishajifungua yeye mwenyewe hataweza kushughulikia mtoto. Kisa na maana ni kwa sababu kwa akili yake jinsi alivyo kwa wakati huo, haoni maana, haoni hiyo ni kama, nitasema ni kama ni kazi yake. Anaona ni kama kuna mtu mwingine anafaa kuzingatia. Hii ita affect mtoto kwa sababu mtoto atakuwa neglected na mama yake. Mtoto kama huyo anahitaji kunyonya, anahitaji kuangaliwa. Akikuwa neglected, atakuwa mtoto hafahamu upendo wa mama. Kwa hivyo hiyo itamuaffect hata kisaikolojia anavyokuwa mkubwa.
Esther, mtoto anapokosa hilo penzi la mama, kukosa ziwa la mama, manake tunajua hospitali wanasisitiza kwamba mtoto apewe ziwa kwa miezi 6, lakini anapolikosa sasa, pia yeye huenda pia akapata maradhi ya kiakili katika wakati huo.
Ndio tunajaribu kusema ndio. Kwa sababu tunaweza sema penzi la mama ni muhimu sana. Ndio maana watu wengi kwa hii society, kama hauna hiyo, naweza sema aje na Kiswahili ama tuseme tu na Kizungu, if you don't have that right upbringing, it affects your afterlife. Kwa sababu hauna mtu wa kukuonesha hivi ndio unafaa ku-associate na watu wengine, ama hauna hiyo first steps, baby steps za kuonesha na how to kupendana na kuishi na watu wengine kama kwa jamii.
Mtoto yule, kuna hii sasa postnatal depression. Tushazungumzia ile depression ya kwanza ambao ni wakati wa ujauzito. Postnatal depression ya baada ya kujifungua, nayo pia sasa nataka tuangalie inaanza vipi, tunaanza kuitambua vipi baadaye kwamba huyu mama ama huyu mzazi mchanga yupo na msongo wa mawazo ya baada ya kujifungua. Naam.
Kwa ufupi, baada ya kujifungua bado hormones hazijatulia, ziko tunasemanga ziko all over the place, ziko kama kila mahali. So kwa sababu pia sasa mwili inarudi normal vile ilikuwa kabla hajabeba mimba ama hajajifungua, inakuwa bado kwa upande wake hajisikii. Ndaweza kufafanuaje kwa Kiswahili? Hajisikii
kwa sawa. Kwa Kiingereza bora watu waelewe.
She does not feel like herself, like her usual self. Hana furaha, hawezi kujieleza ni kwa nini. Analia kwa sababu ya chochote, anauoga wa kukutana na watu wengine, hataki kusocialize na wengineo kwa sababu hajisikii ni kama yuko yeye na hajui ni kwa nini.
Hajihisi kama mtu, hajihisi wa maana.
Ndio, anataka tu kukua kivyake. Sasa unaona hiyo ikiendelea inamaanisha unaweza mwacha hata nyumbani asubuhi hajaoga na jioni utampata hajaoga na hataki kujua. Na si ati hajaoga kwa sababu amekuwa akifanya kitu kingine, na huu tu ni mfano. Si ati hajaoga kwa sababu hajakuwa akifanya kitu kingine, but pia hajashughulikia mtoto. Kwake anataka tu mambo yakae vile alivyo na awachwe peke yake, asisumbuliwe na chochote kile ama na mtu yoyote. Huyo ina include hata mtoto wake. Na unajua mtoto akineglectiwa hivyo, mtoto ni very sensitive, chochote chaweza kufanyika. Hujui kama ni mgonjwa, hujui kama ana complication yenye haukufahamu before na imetokea leo. So hii inahatarisha maisha ya mama na maisha ya mtoto. At the same time, isitoshe pia watu walio karibu na yeye watakuwa na wakati mgumu kwa sababu hawafahamu shida ni nini, kwa hivyo hawajui vile wanaweza kumsaidia.
Kabla afike Thalia, kwa psychiatrist labda ama kwa mtaalamu wa masuala ya kiakili, nyumbani mimi naweza mjuaje kwamba mke wangu nahisi ni kama anahitaji usaidizi? Manake tuangalie yule Mkenya wa kawaida wa ngazi ya chini ambaye hawezi enda hospitali kubwa ama hawezi kuja katika kliniki yenu mara moja. Yupo tu kule nyumbani katika mtaani kwake tu, yeye anahisi kwamba mke wake vile alimwacha asubuhi hajaoga kama ule mfano uliotoa, amerudi bado yuko vile vile, nguo zile zile, na anahisi kwamba bado anataka kuingia kitandani na nguo zile zile. Ataanzaje kujua mtu dalili za kwanza, ishara na kitu gani labda anaweza anza kufanya pia yeye kama mume ambaye ameona kitu kama kile?
Okay, tunaweza sema kwa mfano venye umesema, unaweza anza kwa kumuuliza ni nini inaendelea, venye nilikuacha leo.
Itakuwa rahisi kwa sababu tayari ni kama ameshaanza kutengeza ukuta wa kujilinda yeye zaidi. Naam.
So tunaweza sema wewe ndo unamjua zaidi kuliko mtu yoyote. So unaweza jua venye utamu approach. Either umwambie kuna maji moto kwa bafu, unaweza kuja kidogo uoge, ama nitakushikia mtoto, lakini ukiona hataki kuchukua hiyo step ya kwanza, ujue basi kuna shida. Ama kitu kingine ni kwamba unaweza muuliza leo umeshindaje, akwambie tumeshinda vyema. Haya, mtoto amekulaje? Sasa kwambia mtoto amekula saa, ulimnyonyesha saa ngapi? Sasa hapo hizo maswali kidogo kidogo unaweza anza kuuliza, na wewe pia ujue kama unaona haziambatani ama kuna venye hazikai vizuri.
Nikukate Esther.
Okay.
Kuna yule ambaye ukianza kumuuliza maswali anakuambia unauliza maswali kama polisi.
Naelewa.
Unajua anahisi hivyo ama majibu, sababu umemuuliza swali la kwanza na pili ya mfululizo, anaanza kukujibu maswali ya mkato ama ya hasira.
Ndio.
Sasa utajuaje? Labda yuko sawa lakini tu anahisi kwani unaniona mimi tayari nishapayuko ama nishafanyika nini yani?
Sasa hiyo tunaweza sema hiyo inaweza kwa kama aggressive behavior. Anaji protect mwenyewe. Sasa kama akuangi hivyo, hata wewe jiulize kwa nini leo ako very protective. Maybe saa zingine ukikuja anaongeanga tu, tumeshinda vizuri, tumefanya hii na hii, lakini leo unaona ako very protective. Hata hiyo ni sign moja. Kwa nini ako na hii aggressive behavior? Hivyo ndo tunaweza sema. Tena hiyo ndo njia nyingine unaweza jiuliza. Maybe Nancy ako na mengi ya kuongezea.
Pia tusisahau tunaishi kwa jamii na kuna wanawake wengi na wanawake huongea. Kile ambacho hataweza kukuambia wewe, ataambia rafiki yake, ataambia dadake, ataambia dada yako, ataambia mwanamke mwingine yoyote aliye karibu na wewe. Kwa hivyo si lazima wewe ndio uulize. Unaweza tuma mtu mwingine aulize, but na pia ule mtu utatuma ulize ikuwe ni mtu namwamini, mtu pia mke wako anaamini, na mtu anaweza kupea mawaidha sawa.
Nakubali kwamba naweza tumia watu wengine. Lakini mmezungumzia kwamba pia kuna wale ambao wanajihisi wametengwa, ilhali wao wenyewe ndio wametenga watu. Mtu kama huyu sasa pia namfikishiaje ujumbe ama namfikishiaje mtu wa kupata kile ambacho kinamkwaza paka labda akili yake saizi imeanza kupata matatizo, ameanza kupata msongo wa mawazo, anawaza mengi.
Unja mtu kama huyo mwenye amejitenga, hakuna njia ingine ila kujaribu kumtengua kujaribu kukaribiana na yeye, kwa sababu akianza kujitenga ataendelea tu kujitenga mpaka mtu aweze kumrudisha. Sasa inabidi ikue mwenye atamuongelesha ama atamkaribia ni mtu amezoea, ni mtu anajua vizuri, na ni mtu hawajakoseana ama hawajatofautiana mahali popote. Ndio aweze kuamini huyu mtu ana nia nzuri, huyu mtu hanipangii mabaya ama hana nia nyingine yoyote mbaya.
Mtu kama huyu sasa anapokuja kwenye kliniki yenu, nataka munieleze tiba yake, vile sasa tunaanza kumtibu mpaka angalau arudi kuwa sawa.
Okay. So process yetu naweza sema inaanza na hiyo maswali venye tulisema. Akishajibu hayo maswali anaingia kuona daktari. Alafu daktari anamwelezea diagnosis zake. Alafu next step ni anaanza kuona psychiatrist. So sisi tuko na counselors anytime 24/7 wenye wanaweza wapigia simu any time of the day, any time of the night. Alafu wanaongea naye, so mawasiliano itaendelea pole pole. Hata kama anaona psychiatrist, pia ako na counselors na nurses on standby wenye wanaweza kuja anytime kumwangalia.
Tunatofautishaje kurogwa na ugonjwa huu? Manake sisi ni wa Afrika. Sasa lazima tutasema kuna juju hapa imeendelea ama kuna uchawi hapa umefanyika. Vipi tuanza kueleza mtu kwamba huu si uchawi? Huu ni ugonjwa ambao una tiba, unaweza kupata tiba.
So tunaweza sema
shakuja kwa hospitali lakini labda mambo bado. Anafika nyumbani anapata jirani anamwambia Dr. Kasim yule namba ameiweka pale kwenye mti, mimi namjua vizuri.
Ndo maana tunataka kukuwa na more education ya community, na tunaweza sema hii habari ienee, ndio watu waache kuchukulia hii maneno kama ya urogi ama ya naweza semaje kama ya urogi venye unasema ama ni mitishamba mtu amekwekea mahali. So ndo
mtu hataki upate mtoto wa kiume.
Naelewa Kenya na sasa ndo maana kwa hii yetu tunafundisha na kufundisha pia daktari pia wajue kuongelesha hawa patients wanapokuja hospitalini. So kutakuwa na hiyo training, alafu tuna hope pia kwa community tuna hold training, tunawaambia, alafu kutakuwa na hizo group maybe mnapitia kama nyinyi ni wajawazito, mnakuja nyinyi wote pamoja, tunawaasiliana, tunawasomesha.
Nancy, labda hospitali zinakosea wapi? Mama shajifungua katika kituo chenu cha afya, alafu anakuja zile kliniki za kawaida, lakini mimi nahisi kama zile kliniki za kawaida sana hazimwangalii mama, zinamwangalia tu ukuaji wa mtoto.
Kwa maoni yangu nitasema si ya kwamba hospitali zinakosea, but hawako equipped, hawajapewa elimu
kidogo. Nancy, ni kukate tuende katika jumba la telecommunication hapa katikati ya jiji la Nairobi tuweze kumsikia hatibu wa serikali Cyrus Oguna ambaye anazungumzia masuala mbalimbali ikiwemo masuala ya corona, KCSE na KCPE, mitihani ya kitaifa. Tumsikize alafu tuweze kurudi tuendelee na mjadala huu.
The reason why these matatus are actually moving all over the place, sometimes killing our people, is because they're moving because the government is there. Try to imagine the government is not there. Figure out that kind of situation. The government is not there. You know what will happen? Even the car that you have out there, that you're parked out there, somebody will come and tell you that I want that key. Give it to me. You know that? So sometimes we do not appreciate the presence of the government. Why? Because the government is there. We'll get to know the importance of it when it is not there. Do you understand what I'm saying, my friend? The government is there, and therefore the government is protecting each and every one of us. You know, we drove from home to here. That road has been constructed by the government. I trust that before you came over here, you were able to open the tap, and there was water in that tap. That has been done by the government. There are many, many things that can go on and on and on and on. So when you say the government, when will the government be concerned about local mwananchi? Trust me, if you walk right now, even as you're speaking, which county do you come from? Sorry to ask, but not profiling, we just want to.
I come from different counties, Mombasa and Machakos.
Okay, let's use Mombasa for one. And now let me just explain first, allow me. In Mombasa, the government has been able to construct 450 different projects, all aimed at improving the well-being and the welfare of the people of Mombasa. One of those projects is Dongo Kundu, which you are familiar with. It is in Mombasa, but it will benefit everybody in this country. There are other projects. Even in Mombasa, we are talking about Mwache water project in Kwale. It is aimed at providing the whole of Mombasa, Kilifi, and Kwale with water. That is the government concerned about the welfare and well-being of the people of Mombasa. There is the Baricho water project, which you must be familiar with. The government is doing so much, all aimed at improving your life, my life, and his life. That is the government. So when you say the government, well, will the government be concerned about the well-being and the welfare of Mwananchi? It stems from the point of view that we have not really appreciated what the government is doing and has done. The government has done so much. So you just need to move out a little bit to be able to see. Next time we're going out of town, we'll invite you to go with us so that you can be able to see firsthand what the government is doing. So, ndugu yangu.
I get your point, and I appreciate what the government is doing. My question was in regards to
Naam, shukrani sana. Huyo ni hatibu wa serikali Cyrus Oguna akizungumzia masuala mbalimbali kuhusiana na kitaifa na vile ambavyo hali inaendelea katika taifa hili. Awali alizungumzia masuala ya maandalizi ya taifa hili, hususan kuhusiana na mitihani ya kitaifa ambayo wiki ijayo mitihani ya kitaifa ya kidato ya shule za msingi itakuwa inaandaliwa kuanzia siku ya Jumatatu tarehe 22 hadi 24 mwezi Machi. Alafu ile mitihani ya kidato cha 4 ianze tarehe 8 Machi, tarehe 28 Machi hadi tarehe 21 Aprili. Hapo ndio itakuwa mitihani hiyo inaanza ya KCSE. Tayari serikali ikisema kwamba mipango yote ipo shwari kuhakikisha kwamba wanafunzi wanaweza kufikiwa na mitihani hii inaweza kuwafikia katika maeneo yao. Vile vile hatibu huyo wa serikali Cyrus Oguna amezungumzia hali ilivyo kuhusiana na mkurupuko ama ugonjwa wa COVID-19 humu nchini. Vile vile amezungumzia ajali za kuhusiana na masuala ya barabarani, hususan waendeshaji pikipiki ambao wanalaumiwa sana kwa ongezeko la vifo vya ajali za barabarani. Huduma namba pia wa Kenya inaendelea Nairobi, watu wanaendelea kuchukua na vile vile imeanza kupeanwa katika maeneo mbalimbali ya taifa hili huduma namba. Kwa hivyo serikali ikiwasihi wale ambao tayari wamepata jumbe fupi za kuwataka kwenda kuchukua huduma namba hizo ama kadi zao hizo za huduma namba, waende katika maeneo waliotajiwa ama walikoelekezwa waweze kupata huduma hiyo ama kadi zao za huduma. Kuna mengi ambayo yanaendelea. Mwanahabari wetu Purity Museu yuko pale. Baadaye mwendo saa 7 atakuwa anatufahamisha kwa kina yapi ambayo hatibu wa serikali Cyrus Oguna ameweza kuyazungumza na atakuwa anatuandalia taarifa hiyo. Lakini tukirudi katika gumzo letu asubuhi hii ama mchana huu, tunazungumzia afya ya kiakili kwa akina mama wajawazito. Je, athari yake ni gani, hususan kwa mtoto, kwa familia na yeye mwenyewe mama? Kwa sababu tushaelezwa toka awali kwamba zipo aina kadhaa, kwa Kiingereza wakisema kuna depression na anxiety, kwamba ugonjwa huu wa akili kwa kina mama ambao ni wajawazito unawapata wakiwa wajawazito na pia baada ya kujifungua. Na haja kubwa ni ya wewe mwenyewe ambaye mama mjamzito uweze kujiangalia hali yako, uweze kujua, na pia wewe ambaye ni mpenzi wake ama bwanake, mumewe, uweze kujua mabadiliko yoyote yanayotokea kwa mkeo, uweze kuangalia kwa kina na uweze kuhakikisha kwamba unaweza kupata tiba ya mapema kwa mkeo. Nirudi kwenu Nancy Nzinza Ngonda na Esther Wanjiru Muhia ambao ndio wataalamu wetu ambao wanatufahamisha kuhusiana na masuala haya mbalimbali ambayo tumeyapigia gumzo mchana huu wa leo. Nataka kuangalia athari. Kuna wanaume ambao pia wanakuwa wanawanyanyasa ama familia zinamnyanyasa mke. Athari yake ni gani kwa ugonjwa huu wa kiakili kwa kina mama wajawazito?
Tutasema haisaidii hata kidogo. Inafanya mambo ya kuwe mabaya kuliko vile alikuwa hapo awali, kwa sababu kwa mwanamke aliye kwenye ndoa anataka support ya mwenye aliyemuoa, mababa ya mtoto, anataka support ya familia na anataka support ya kiuchumi. Hivyo vitu vitatu vikikosa, depression ama anxiety ni rahisi kupata, kwa sababu hajui who to turn to, hajui aitishe usaidizi wapi ama kwa nani, na hii itamfanya kweni kama yuko mfungwa kwa akili yake, kwa sababu hajui ajisaidie kivipi.
Tushampata ni mgonjwa Nancy. Tiba yake inachukua muda gani, ama haina muda tiba? Ama
haina muda tiba kwa sababu kuna wakati unaweza kuja kuona psychologist, unasaidika, but unarudi kwa ile shida kila siku. Kama shida iko nyumbani, ama shida ni mume, ama shida ni familia, unarudi pale pale. Na unaona kama psychologist haizi kuambia hama
achana na mumeo.
Hiyo ni lazima ikue decision yako wewe mwenyewe, umefikiria, umepanga, umeamua. Kazi yake ni kukusaidia kuona adhari iko wapi na kukupatia options, uchaguo la jinsi unaweza kusaidika ama kujisaidia, but haizi kuamulia vile utafanya. Sasa kwa kila mtu ni tofauti na muda ambao itachukua pia ni tofauti. Hatusemi utapona na hutawahi kuwa depressed maisha yako yote, juu tayari tunajua tunasemanga una a tendency to get depressed, but tunakufundisha jinsi ya kucope. Ukijua unaanza kujifahamu, unajijua nikiona nimeanza kukua hivi na hivi na hivi, inaonekana nimeanza kuwa depressed na naweza kujisaidia na hii na hii na hii. Sasa inakuwa ni kama maintenance. Ndio.
Nancy, labda najua unataka kuchangia swala hilo la dhulma za kijinsia hasa nyumbani kwa kina mama.
Kwa kina mama, so tunaweza, kuna wenye Nancy amesema naweza penda kuongezea, kuna kuanga na underlining issues. So tunaweza sema sasa tuchukue kitunguu, anza kupeel moja kwa moja. So kila situation iko na underlining issue. So ile underlining issue yenye tunaona maybe kuna ingine. So ndo maana tunataka tu mama aendelee na hiyo tibu. Na kitu ingine ni ya kwamba hata kama anaona psychologist, ni vizuri kukuwa na wanawake wengine wenye wamepitia hiyo ugonjwa, ndio waweze kuongea, kusaidiana. Hiyo pia ni another way of treatment.
Na kupeana moyo.
Na kupeana moyo kama support.
Ikiwa mkeo ana ugonjwa huu, kuna uwezekano pia wewe mume ukajipata postnatal imekuathiri, ama itakuwa tu ni kujifanya tu unataka kurevenge wenyewe wanasema?
Hapana, lazima iko affect kwa sababu wampenda huyo mtu. So kenye inamwathiri pia we unaisikia pia wewe. So ni vizuri pia we kama anafaa kwenda hizo group meetings tuseme, pia we unaenda. Hata we kuna wazee wengine watakuja, hata mnaweza ongea muone mimi nafanyanga hivi, mimi nafanyanga hivi. Msaidiane na nyumba yenu iendelee ikue mzuri.
Kando na uchawi na urogi, kuna ile kuficha siri. Ati watu watamuona chizi ama watamuona mke wangu hana akili. Watu wanayaficha. Athari za kuficha mambo kama haya pia kwa jamii ni gani?
Sasa hiyo ndo one of the treatment tunaweza sema ni fungua roho yako. Sema vitu vilivyokuwa. Sasa hadhari ni utakaa nayo siku moja ujipate we mwenyewe hatujielewi, umechukua kisu umemdunga mtoto kuzuna, una blame huyu mtoto. Sasa hiyo ni adhari moja. Ingine ni hiyo tulikuwa tunasema kuchukua moyo wako, kwa sababu hauoni any importance ya kuishi maisha yako anymore. Unataka tu iishe, hauoni utamu wa maisha, hauoni marafiki wako ama mpenzi wako akimaanisha kitu. So inakupeleka kwa, tunaweza sema it pushes you to the wall, alafu inakufanya ufanye other drastic measures which are not good.
Nataka tuzungumzie suicidal, ambayo ndo inakaa kwamba ndio athari zaidi ikiwa mtu na ugonjwa huu. Tushajua kwamba mkewe Suleiman yuko suicidal. How do we treat her? Vipi tunamtibu? Vipi tunaanza kumshauri kwamba, manake hii akili inaweza mpata akiwa peke yake, akiwa barabarani, akiwa mahali kokote. Tiba ya mtu ambaye anataka kujitoa uhai ni gani?
So kwa kwanza, mtu akikuja kwambia nasikia kufanya suicidal, unamuuliza umepangaje? Umenunua dawa? Umepangaje kujisuicide aje? Hiyo inakwanga mtu atakwambia. Aya, ukishajua ya pili ni ujue kama ni polisi utaita, kwa sababu saa zingine tunaweza sema they are a risk for themselves, they are a risk for themselves. So hawezi achwa kwa wenyewe, so hawezi achwa peke yake. Kama uko na mtu mwenye anaweza kaa na yeye ni vizuri, kama hakuna umpeleke tu hospitalini ndio aweze kukaa na mtu hapo mwenye atamwangalia hiyo 24/7 until apate hiyo support.
Nancy, tushapata mgonjwa kwamba ana athari ama ana athari ya kwamba izajua yeye mwenyewe. Athari ile inamwekapi mtoto, hata yule mtoto mchanga na wale watoto wengine ambao labda washakuwa, tuseme athari hii ya mgonjwa umemtokea kwa mtoto wake wa pili ama watatu?
Kwa kawaida unajua mtoto hafahamu nini inaendelea, anafuata anachoona. Sasa ile hatari kubwa iko ni kwa sababu niko sure tumeona cases mingi sana kwa habari, mama amejiua na ameua watoto wake na akajiua kwa sababu hataki kuacha watoto wakihangaika ama wakikejeliwa na jamii.
Ni hiyo fikra ya kwamba yeye tayari
amefika
mwisho, anajiona kwamba hata hawa pia sitaki wabaki ama nini?
Huwa kawaida kwa kivyake ukimuuliza anawasaidia kwa sababu hataki wabaki kwa shida, lakini in reality kitakachobaki tu ni huzuniko na mahangaiko kwa jamii, kwa sababu hatujui mtoto angekuwa mkubwa angekuwa nani ama angesaidia jamii kivipi. Ndio.
Tuangalie pia kuna swala lingine linajitokeza katika ugonjwa huu ambao wanaita stress, ambao bado ni msongo wa mawazo tu kwa Kiswahili, ama mtu ana mawazo kupita kiasi. Je, sasa stress inatokea wapi? Maana tushazungumzia depression na anxiety. Kuna stress pia ambayo inakuja. Stress wakati ana ujauzito, ndio pale tunasikia alikuwa na stress akapoteza mtoto. Naam, so mtoto akipotea kama vile pia inaweza kuchangia mama kupata swala hili la postnatal mental health.
Tunaweza sema itampatia stress related disorders ama anxiety related disorders, kwa sababu clearly mama alikuwa na mimba, which means alikuwa na mpango wa kupata mtoto, si kitu hakutaka ama si kitu hakutarajia. Kwa hivyo stress ikikuwa mingi ama anxiety ikikuwa mingi inaweza saidia kufanya mtoto atoke, na hii kwake itamfanya akue stress kwa sababu mwanzo tunasema nini, anahuzunika, anaomboleza kwa sababu amepoteza mtoto. Alafu pili, hormones zake bado haziko sawa. Hizo vitu mbili ukichanganya hazisaidiani, zinaharibu tu akili ya kiafya zaidi. Ndio.
Athari ya stress ni nini?
Tunaweza sema hadhari yake ni, unaona zile vitu za kawaida ulikuwa unafanya, sasa tu venye niliongea mbeleni, sasa tuseme kama ulikuwa unaenda gym, tuseme unaenda mazoezi, sasa hautaki, unaona kazi ni mingi, ama kazi ya nyumba unaona ni mingi sana, maybe ile ulikuwa unafanya kosha vyombo, kosha nguo, unaona ikiwa vitu mingi sana. Sasa tunaweza sema ukifika hapo unaona kila kitu inaenda ikikuwa mingi, ujue kuna shida. So shida yake ni uongee na mtu, umwambie, ama uambie mume wako ama mpenzi wako akutafutie mtu akoshe vyombo, ama akutafutie mtu akoshe, tunaweza sema akusaidie na kazi ya nyumba, kwa sababu inaweza kuwa overwhelming as a new mom. Uko na mtoto mdogo, uko na vitu mingi zinaendelea.
Nancy, nikichukua kauli yako ya mwisho kuhusiana na hatua, mbinu, angalau tuweze kuwalinda akina mama ambao ni wajawazito, wafanye nini, na anapokuja kwenu hospitali pia labda nyinyi mtamsaidia na nini?
Sisi sasa ndasema tutamuevaluate, tutaweza kuangalia kama yuko at risk kupata stress ama kupata postnatal ama prenatal depression, kama tayari yuko kwa postnatal ama prenatal depression, na tutaweza kumpea mawaidha jinsi ya kujisaidia, kwa sababu si shida itapotea jinsi ilivyokuja, ni shida itachukua muda, lakini akifahamu yuko wapi katika hii scale ya hii shida, ataweza kuchukua steps zitakazomsaidia kupunguza ama kufika mwisho kwa haraka. Ndio.
Nataka tu mshauri msichana mdogo mwenye ambaye ni mjamzito ama mama mdogo ambaye ni mjamzito wakati huu, umuhimu wa kupata ushauri kwanza kuhusiana na afya yake ya kiakili wakati ana ujauzito, ikiwa ndio kauli yako ya mwisho. Esther.
Naweza sema ukijua uko mjamzito, tafadhali ukienda prenatal test, uliza maswali mengi venye kuwa open, kwa sababu especially for watoto wadogo, wale wajawazito kama tunavyoona, wale wako shuleni maybe high school, ni vizuri uongee changamoto zenye unaweza pitia ama zenye unapitia, ndo tujue kuwa open na tena usifunge maneno. Hata kama ni kitu unaona ni ujinga, ongea. Hakuna kitu ya ujinga, kila kitu unayopitia ni kitu na tunaweza kusaidia. Isifike mbali sana alafu feel siwezi endelea na maisha.
Shukrani sana. Ni Esther Wanjiru Muhia na Nancy Nziza Ngonda ambao ni wataalamu wa masuala ya kiakili kutoka shirika la Thalia kama sijakosea, ambao ndo wametueleza na kutufahamisha kuhusiana na masuala haya ya kiakili. Lakini mimi hapa ndipo nafika tamati. Jina langu ni Suleiman Yeri na mwenzangu ishara ni Lensa Odingo. Lakini kabla ya kuondoka, nataka nikupeleke hadi katika jiji la Kisumu ambapo gavana wa Kisumu Profesa Anyang' Nyong'o anazungumzia masuala mbalimbali kule, ambapo mwanahabari wetu Wycliffe Okechi uko pale tuarifu kwamba gavana huyo anapeana hotuba yake, kwa hivyo tuweze kumsikiliza. Lakini mimi ndio nitakuwa nimeshaondoka. Wakati ukirudi itakuwa ni wakati wa habari za saa 7 mchana kwa lugha ya Kimombo.
That need to be obeyed or implemented, observed in the county to stem the tide of the rise of COVID-19 in Kisumu County. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen of the media, as you may be aware, the county is experiencing a new wave of COVID-19 infections in this period that is now considered the third wave, and Kisumu is no exception. Available data shows that there could be quite a number of people succumbing to the effects of this pandemic. Here in Kisumu, the situation is of alarming proportions, and we must act now to stem the tide and the escalation. In the last week alone, our positivity rate has risen from 2.5% to 4.7%, almost 100% rise. Yesterday, out of a test of 200 people, as I've said, we realized 26 positive cases, with a majority of this number coming from Kisumu Central. In view of the foregoing, Kisumu County COVID-19 Multi-Agency Committee convened today and cognizant of the presidential directives on COVID-19 protocols enhancement has approved the following containment measures. 1, all morgues or mortuaries are hereby directed not to preserve dead bodies for a period of exceeding 72 hours and not to release anybody after 10 a.m. That means in general that once somebody passes on, they should be buried within 72 hours of the date of passing on. There shall be no night vigil in the homes of the deceased. Thirdly, the maximum number of persons allowed in any burial ceremony is 100 people and no more. Fourth, there shall be no catering services at the funeral venues. This is not because we want to be mean, but we want to reduce the incidence of possible transmission of COVID-19 when you have to take off the barakoa and eat, especially in a crowded place like a funeral setting. 5, all places of worship shall only admit 1/3 of their capacities for services. In other words, please know the size of your church, your mosque, or your temple, and only 1/3 of persons that can fit that church will be allowed, or that place of worship will be allowed in on any Sunday or other days of worship that your own denomination of faith may determine. 6, all the home-based clients in isolation and care must adhere to the laid down guidelines, fail at which prosecution shall be instituted after institutional confinement and negative testing. 7, regular hand washing and sanitizing and proper wearing of face masks while in public places is mandatory. If you are found in the public domain without a mask, you shall be fined 2,000 shillings or spend 30 days in prison. 8. All public service vehicles must adhere to the laid down COVID-19 protocol and guidelines. That is capacity, hand sanitizing, and must be cleared by the County Director of Public Health. Border borders shall strictly carry only one passenger. Let me repeat. Border borders shall strictly carry only one passenger, with tuk-tuks carrying a maximum of 2 passengers. 9. All restaurants and eateries must adhere to the prescribed COVID-19 regulations, and they shall only be allowed to operate after obtaining clearance certificate signed by the Director of Public Health and Sanitation in Kisumu County. Failure of which, if you don't have such a certificate, you presume yourself to be closed and not to be allowed to carry on any business at that premise. Failure of which, the police will take necessary action. 10, all political gatherings within the county remain banned until further notice. Let it be noted that all these rules already exist in the past, but they seem to have been laxed. So no public gatherings, social distancing must be observed in a place that people are more than 2. There must be sanitizing and hand washing routinely as you enter and leave a place. Masks must be worn. And curfew hours end at 9. There's curfew at 9, and anybody found breaking curfew.
Thank you, Lord, for having given us this wonderful day. Before we do anything, let your glory be seen in us. My names are Pastor Joseph Maiti Wichenje from African Divine Church Mission, Patmos Assembly, Pangani Region. We are situated in Mathare, Area 4, Mradi. Today, I want to speak about restoration. And our verse will come from the book of Joel, chapter 2, verse 25 and 26. I read, I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten, the great locusts, the young locusts, the other locusts, and the locust swarm, my great army that I sent among you. You will have plenty to eat until you are full, and you will praise the name of the Lord of your God, who has worked wonders for you. Never again will my people be shamed. Now, I believe in life we have situations where we are facing difficulties. We have been having our jobs where locusts have eaten in form of diseases. Our bodies are wasting away in form of diseases. Our food stores are wasted. Our situations are wasted, our businesses. But God says, I will restore all this, because these things came about as a result of our not doing what our God requires us to do. So he sent his army in form of locusts. There are armies out there in form of diseases, in form of insects that are eating